Chapter 17. 10 Times of Gravity. Chapter 17. 10 Times Gravity. The Serene Valley was now filled with broken weapons. Luo Hao, Zhao Xian and other men were encircling Mu Dai, defending against the fierce attacks of those from the dark world. The tall, thin man in a gray gown, on whose shoulder was an embroidered silver crescent, was directing his 8 subordinates to encircle the 4 of them. The eyes were cold and ghastly under their pale masks. "Miss Mu, you'd better come back with us to the Lord of the Dark World, or we don't know what we will do to you." The tall, thin man in gray gown, seemingly the leader, remarked coldly as he was directing his people. Disgusted, Mu Dai shook her head and said firmly, "I would rather die than go back with you guys. So you have decided not to cooperate, Miss Mu. Then I'm very sorry if my people catch you." Pausing for a second, the man grinned. "Luo Hao, you should know how powerful our dark world is. If you go against us, you are bringing about your own destruction." Haha. Luo Hao burst into laughter. His voice was resonant. "I'm always alone. To kill me, you dark world would have to pay a lot. You are a dark moon emissary of the dark world, with the power of the second sky of the disaster realm. It's enough to bring you with me when I die. Do you think you even deserve that type of death?" That emissary shook his head and vanished into thin air. The next moment, he was standing 3 meters in front of Luo Hao. He stretched out his left hand, his 5 fingers shaped like a claw. Between them glowed a ghost-like green light, which suddenly flew toward Luo Hao and started to twine about him like a ribbon. Luo Hao's facial expression changed a bit. He uttered calmly, "Zhao Xian, you 3. Protect Dai." Boom, boom, boom. Luo Hao's heart was beating several times faster than before. Around him, the power of gravity surged 10 times. All of a sudden, the 8 men surrounding Luo Hao's group felt an immense pressure, as if they were being pressed down by a huge mountain. The pressure almost made them kneel on the ground. Even the crescent emissary was affected. However, he grunted and said, "Luo Hao, what a surprise. Yours truly at an advanced level. 10 times gravity. No wonder you are so arrogant." Ha ha ha. "If I can't even do that, how could I claim that I will bear you with me?" Luo Hao replied calmly, with an indifferent smile on his face. Meanwhile, the broadsword on his shoulder gave out a dazzling blue light, increasing that monstrous pressure. Luo Hao laughed loudly as he wielded the sword in his hand, and walked right in front of Mu Dai, obstructing the crescent emissary. After the crescent emissary displayed a gloomy green light had pervaded the air. But it seemed to be influenced by the increased gravity, for the crescent emissary had difficulty controlling it. He curved his fingers and pushed forward, as he encircled Luo Hao with other 3-star emissaries. "Zhao Xian, take Miss Mu away," Luo Hao shouted. The broadsword in his hand gave out a bright blue light and looked like a shooting star when slashed. It was able to obstruct the enemy and bar their way. Shi Yan was hiding behind an ancient tree, some 50 meters away from the fight. He gazed at the fight with a rigid face, with his eyes shining in the dark. All the people from the dark world were at the nascent realm. And that crescent emissary had reached the second sky of the disaster realm. It was too much for him. If he hastily took action, he would be easily killed before he could move near Mu Dai. Shi Yan was envisioning various scenarios for the best possible approach. A few seconds later, his eyes radiated. He grabbed his bag cautiously and took out the bone-cutting powder, which was wrapped in a soft cloth. Lowering his body, he then quietly climbed out onto the tree branch. Through the long branches of the tree, Shi Yan was moving cautiously toward the battling crowd. Bone-cutting powder was a drug invented by Karu, the alchemist who was unmindful of his work. It made one's veins and bones become numb, decrease their power. Its effect could last for 3 hours, enough time to change the result of a battle. "Zhao Xian, leave," Luo Hao roared, as his sword radiated with blue light. He, by himself, was fighting against the dark world's assassins. "Miss Mu." Zhao Xian was anxious. He stamped on the ground and said, "Hurry, please." Mu Dai looked tranquil, but her eyes showed stubbornness. She spoke softly, "I won't leave. If you 3 stay, we might win. But once we leave, Uncle Luo will definitely die." Without Uncle Luo, we can't win against the dark world anyway. We would still be caught. Good. Let's fight till death. Zhao Xian was a smart person. Upon hearing Mu Yudai's words, he made up his mind and shouted, Diyalan. Hu Long. Fight. They encircled Mu Yudai, took out their sharp weapons, and charged with all their strength toward those dark world emissaries. For of you, go and take care of those 3 kids. The Crescent emissary frowned and ordered coldly, Don't hurt Miss Mu. The Lord has given the order. Miss Mu should be taken back alive and unhurt. Yes, sir, the 4-star emissaries replied, and in no time rushed toward those 3. Just then, abruptly, a slight sound came from above. The Crescent emissary aroused vigilance. As soon as he looked up, he shouted, Damn it. Run! It was too late. Gray dust fell from the sky like drizzle and spread over the area. Everybody, including those from the dark world, were covered by the dust. No one was spared. The Crescent emissary quickly realized the situation as he held his breath. Though he drew back, there was still a lot of dust on his gown. However, the dust had a strong penetrating power as it entered into his body through his skin. As his hands and feet became numb, he had a quick thought and operated his profound chi to defend against it. But those star emissaries were not as cautious as he was. Many of them inhaled the bone-cutting powder, which went into their hearts and lungs, which then quickly affected their bodies. In a few seconds, they were numb all over, their bones softened and their strength weakened. Luo Hao's face turned dark all of a sudden. He was a victim too. Exhausted from the fight, he circulated his meager profound chi throughout his body in order to counter the poison. He looked up into the sky with cold eyes. A thin figure showed up from the branches above them. With an indifferent face, that person flew down from the tree lightly and stood by Mu Yudai calmly, with the latter shocked. He took out a medicine bag and said lightly, Smell the fragrance, you will be detoxified. It's you. Astonishment took over Mu Yudai's moon-like face. She couldn't believe it was Shiryan who flew down from the above. Gazing at Shiryan carefully, Mu Yudai was even more surprised. Shiryan had reached the nascent realm in the past few days. How on earth? Miss, you have saved me twice. Once unintentionally, and another intentionally. I will remember that forever. Shiryan smiled. Seeing that, Mu Yudai grabbed the medicine bag. He added, The effect of the bone-cutting powder shall last for 3 hours, which is not too long, but not too short either. You should know how to deal with it, Mississippi. His dark eyes suddenly went cold. Got it. Mu Yudai got what Shiryan said. She took a deep breath of the fragrance, and then passed the bag to Zhao Xian near her, quick. The Crescent emissary was still operating his profound chi to defend against the effects of bone-cutting powder. Seeing that situation, he shouted with a rigid face, Move. Grab that medicine bag. If they are cured by that powder, none of you will survive. After saying that, he forced his profound chi and dashed toward Luo Hao. As soon as those star emissaries comprehended the situation, they began to besiege Zhao Xian again, despite the poison in their bodies. Before Zhao Xian could get the medicine bag from Mu Yudai, he was surrounded by numerous attacks. His face turned pale, and he had to give up on the medicine bag. Instead, he concentrated and began to confront those emissaries' attacks. So were Hu Long and Dianlan. Under the fierce attacks of those star emissaries, they couldn't even breathe from the medicine bag. Mu Yudai held on to that medicine bag, but couldn't get a chance to pass it to others, so she became very anxious. Helplessly, Mu Yudai turned to Shiryan. Her beautiful eyes were asking for his help. Everybody else was poisoned by bone-cutting powder, and she couldn't operate her profound chi wildly. Although Shiryan was low-ranked, he was quite important now. Seeing Mu Yudai's pleading eyes, Shiryan smiled and asked naturally, Miss, may I know your name? Mu Yudai. A nice name. Shiryan nodded and imprinted that name in his mind. Under Mu Yudai's gaze, he darted out instantly. With a dagger in his hand, Shiryan broke into those emissaries and wielded his dagger with a serious face. The dagger made cold streaks in the air. In no time, the star emissary who was most affected by the bone-cutting powder had a deep wound in his neck and fell to the ground on his back. Shi made swift moves amongst those emissaries and left scars on them, his body flashing like a sharp weapon. Muyudai combed her short hair to the side of her ear with her hand. Astonishment flashed through her eyes, and there was a weird look on her face. I just wanted him to pass them the bag. Chapter 18. Being Pursued. Chapter 18. Being Pursued. A star emissary fell on the ground, and his profound chi was siphoned off. Shi circled thrice around him, and his meridians were charged with foreign profound chi. Waving his dagger, Shi was covered in dark light. He moved among those star emissaries swiftly, avoiding their attacks while leaving wounds on their bodies. 3 star emissaries were completely poisoned by the bone-cutting powder. Their hands and feet were losing strength slowly, and their movements were becoming very slow. Assaulted by Shi, the 3 stood in a triangle, supporting themselves arduously. Shi looked indifferent as he moved about like a ghost. Between the waves of that dagger, icy light exploded. Oh! One of the star emissaries was hit in the back, so he couldn't help but shout, "Kill this bastard first." The other 2 star emissaries nodded in hatred. Letting go of Zhao Xian, Di Yalan, and Hulong, the 3 emissaries spared no effort to operate their profound chi. 3 streaks of rainbow light sprang from their hands. The rainbow light flew toward Shi like a sentient arrow, reflecting the thoughts of its masters. "Be careful. That is from the dark world," Miyudai cried. "Don't keep the image of that in your mind, or it will chase you forever." Shi decisively moved out of the entanglement, dropping any ideas of fighting against the enemy, and cleared his mind. In an instant, the 3 lost their direction and shot toward the grass in the distance. Bits of grass burst out in the explosion. "Damn it!" One star emissary cursed and prepared to use some other tricks. Just then, Zhao Xian smelled the medicine bag and gradually recovered from the bone-cutting powder. Realizing this, the star emissary who was ready for trouble dashed toward him. Zhao Xian swung his arms. His arms started to stretch out and draw back like a snake. Like a snake, Zhao Xian clasped the emissary, binding him from all angles. "Hulong!" Miyudai shouted, and threw the bag to Hulong, who smelled the bag and quickly dashed out. As Zhao Xian and Hulong had both rejoined the fight, Shi felt less stressed. After sniffing the bag, the 2 got their energy back. But those 3 dark star emissaries got weaker and weaker after they poisoned by the bone-cutting powder. Soon they would be killed by Zhao Xian and Hulong. "Di Yalan, out of the battle. Give this medicine bag to Uncle Luo." Miyudai called to Di Yalan as she saw her ready to join the fight. Di Yalan understood what Miyudai meant and rapidly ran to Luo Hao. Shi stopped and walked to Miyudai. Standing by her, he looked indifferent, but his eyes kept wandering to Di Yalan. Bordeaux long hair, bronze skin, Di Yalan was wearing crimson armor, which only covered her big breasts, the triangle area, and her cute hips. Her flat belly and shiny long legs were all exposed. Though Di Yalan's face was not that pretty, her figure was really hot, and her dress was wild enough to arouse any man. Even while standing beside Miyudai, Shi didn't look at her at all. On the contrary, he couldn't move his goo-goo eyes away from Di Yalan and didn't even bother to hide his male instinct. "Is she pretty?" Miyudai frowned and sniffed. Apparently, she was a little unhappy. Shi came to his senses and smiled to her. "Every man will be attracted by this hot girl." Miyudai had a gleam in her eyes as she gazed at him for a while, and then she giggled. "You are really funny. How old are you? Are you a mature man?" Shi was surprised. She reminded him that his body was only 17 years old. And since he was getting skinnier these days, he looked like a 14-year-old boy now. Being in such an immature body and calling himself a man, talking about such erotic thing. Everything he did was really weird. Shaking his head, Shi didn't explain. He pretended to walk away from Miyudai naturally and approached Zhao Xian and Hulong. With a shrill cry, a star emissary spurted blood out of his mouth. His heart was ruptured by Zhao Xian's. He shook for a moment and then died. Shi came forward. The profound chi from the dead body was slowly absorbed into Shi Yan's body in a way only he knew. At the same time, Shi Yan's eyes began to show a fierce glint, and a killing desire took over his mind. He knew that before the profound chi was purified, that desire would not disappear easily. Having seen what happened with Master Karu, Shi Yan had some experience now. After sensing it carefully for a while, he found that since he had reached the nascent realm, he could suppress the crazy desire in his mind and kept rational after he absorbed the profound chi from the two persons who were of the same level. Shi Yan guessed it was because his level was upgraded. He was merely an elementary realm warrior before, while Karu was of the nascent realm. He crossed a realm to purify Karu's profound chi, thus he went that crazy. Go after them. While Shi Yan was pondering, Zhao Exine yelled and ran with Hulong in the direction of those escaping emissaries. Stop chasing. Let's leave right now. Seeing that the leader, the Crescent emissary, was running away too, Luo Hao shouted at Zhao Exine and Hulong. Why, Uncle Luo? Zhao Exine couldn't understand. Luo Hao breathed the fragrance from the medicine bag deeply and urged, someone's coming. Must be another troop sent out from the dark world. It will be too late for us to leave if the two troops meet. Remember, what is important is not killing those emissaries, but to protect Dai. Hearing that another troop was coming, Zhao Exine was astonished, and thus nodded in agreement. Luo Hao said no more. Though he had not entirely recovered, he came holding Mu Yudai's arm and said to Shi Yan, Boy, thank you very much. However, it's none of your business, so don't get involved and suffer. Goodbye. I own Miss Mu a life. Shi Yan did not seem to know how ferocious the dark world was. He looked nonchalant and said, One needs to return in form of a lake for the favor of one drop, and Miss Mu did save my life. I discriminate between love and hate. If someone treats me badly, I would pay him back 10 times the hatred. If someone does me a favor, I would also return 10 times the gratitude. I will travel with you for a while. Hope I can help. You sure are a man. Hulong praised. Di Yalin showed radiance in her eyes and giggled. Kid, you are not only horny, but also righteous and bold. You peeped me for quite a long time. I was going to teach you a lesson. Now you are forgiven. Mu Yudai was stunned. She didn't expect Shi Yan to be so fair-minded. She was a little bit moved. Well, if you insist, I would not stop you. Luo Hao replied and nodded. He held Mu Yudai and began to run. The other three followed them rapidly. Shi Yan inhaled and followed instantly. With a troop of warriors from Emo family, Emo Chaoga was moving fast through the woods. Suddenly he stopped halfway, rigidly staring at some emissaries from the dark world who had showed up unexpectedly. The Crescent emissary was astounded too. He observed Emo Chaoga and his warriors with questioning eyes. Not knowing where they came from, the emissary was a little worried. Maybe they came to aid Luo Hao. Second uncle, Emo Yanyu murmured. Her intuition was telling her that those people were not here with good intentions, so she wanted to remind Emo Chaoga. Emo Chaoga stared into the Crescent emissary's eyes for a while and remarked, Our target is a skinny boy around 15 years of age, who was last seen carrying a bag. We have no intention of offending you. The Crescent emissary was secretly relieved secretly. The bone-cutting powder was taking effect in his body now, so he could only utilize 30% of his ability. If he were to fight against Emo Chaoga, the outcome won't be good. Hearing what Emo Chaoga said, he had an idea. He said cunningly, Oh, we have seen that boy. He was with our target. May I know where that boy is now? Emo Chaoga asked politely. He didn't notice that Crescent emissary was poisoned by the bone-cutting powder. But according to the gloomy air of that person, he guessed that the emissary was a tricky one, so he held his arrogance. Over there. The Crescent emissary directed and answered coldly, You'd better be careful. That bastard is at a low level, but he is accompanied by a warrior at the first sky of the disaster realm, who had the martial art. Too tough. First sky of the disaster realm. Hearing that, Emo Chaoga frowned slightly, and then nodded. Thanks for the information. Let's go. Emo Chaoga waved his hand and left hurriedly with the warriors of the Emo family. This guy was at the disaster realm as well. After they left, the Crescent emissary's eyes turned dim. He smirked. "Little bastard, you ruined my plan. I will kill you when I recover." Chapter 19. The Martial Spirit of Petrifaction. Chapter 19. Petrifaction Martial Spirit. A huge ancient tree appeared in front of Luohao. Dozens meters high, it was so thick that 10 people couldn't circle it hand in hand. The leaves almost covered the sky. Luohao stopped walking suddenly and released "May you die," then gazed at the ancient tree. He looked dignified and seemed to be making a crucial decision. As Zhao Xian, Di Yalan, and Hulong came near the ancient tree, they turned serious as well, seemingly knowing there was something unusual about this tree. Shi Family frowned, and he began to stare at this huge tree too, not saying a word. Luohao took a deep breath and turned to them, speaking in a low voice. "To the right side of the sky tree, there are hardly any demon beasts, so most warriors and trade caravans choose this way when they cross the dark forest. This route is quite safe. Even if we encounter some demon beasts, they would be of low level, level 1 or level 2. And this route is closer to the Merchant Union, merely taking 10 days to get there." Zhao Xian and the other two nodded. Apparently they all knew it. After pausing for a while, Luohao added in a serious manner, "But to the left of the sky tree, the situation is totally different. It's a longer way to the Merchant Union and is haunted with demon beasts and many audacious warriors and soldiers. Those who dare to go this way are mostly tough guys. Being in danger all the time, they follow no restrictions of any kind. If we choose this way, we need to look out for not only demon beasts, but also for those irrational warriors and soldiers, especially when we have 2 pretty girls here among us. Humph. Anyone who would want to take advantage of me, I will chop his head off." Di Yalan made a cutting motion in the air, with coldness in her beautiful eyes. "Uncle Luo, what do you think?" Zhao Xian asked. "If we advance to the right, those from the dark world will catch up in approximately 1 day, and there will be a nasty fight." Having no choice and depressed, Luohao said, "No one knows if we would be lucky enough in these upcoming days. And if their reinforcements came, it doesn't bode well for us." "What about going to the left?" Hulong asked. "If we go to the left, we would come across demon beasts and more likely, we will be killed by those insane warriors. But it will be the same for those from the dark world. They have bad reputation, and hardly anyone will go against them in the Fire Empire. Yet in this situation, they are the targets of the demon beasts and warriors. If they meet high-grade demon beasts accidentally, it's possible that they all will be killed." Luohao made his speech slowly, and after explaining them the situation, he remarked, "To go via the right side, we won't be confronting any demon beasts or warriors, but the dark world will be a huge threat. To the left, we may be attacked by demon beasts and warriors, but the dark world shall also be threatened. Therefore, to go via the left, we have a greater possibility to escape." "Go to the left then," Miyudai said decisively. "Okay." Luohao nodded and took a glance at Shi Family and said, "Hey kid, there is still time if you want to leave. Otherwise, you will have no chance. I will go with you guys." Shi Family had made up his mind. There was a very irrational side in his personality. That's why he had drowned in extreme sports, which were like games of death, for the past 10 years. When Luohao was depicting the danger of the left side, Shi Family couldn't help but get excited. Luohao nodded and waved his arm. "Well, let's set off. From now on, everyone must be on alert." 1 hour later, Emo Chauga and the warriors from the Emo family also stopped at the sky tree. "Second uncle, which way would they have chosen?" Emo Yenyu asked. "I will chase by the right side. If I don't come back in 2 hours, you guys catch up this way. However, if I don't find them in 2 hours, they should have taken the left way." Emo Chauga thought for a while and ordered them to wait at the intersection. Then he flew away to the right side. After 1.5 hours, Emo Chauga came back with a pale face, not even a slightest sign of these people. "How dare they take the left side? Everybody watch out. There are many demon beasts and warriors on the left side. Never be negligent. Remember, don't make a fuss with those warriors and soldiers. These people are all lunatics. Don't provoke these people who don't know what death is. Yes, sir. Let's go. 3 saber-toothed rhinos were strolling along a brook leisurely. They were level 3 demon beasts. A silver glow shone on the back, their teeth were as sharp as sabers, while their fist-like brown eyes glittered with a murderous look. The 3 rhinos were all covered by hard mud, which formed a natural armor, through which any normal weapon would find hard to cut. The 3 saber-toothed rhinos were sipping water now and then, while looking around discreetly, seemingly to be looking for game. In the bushes not far from them, Luohao made a gesture to imply everybody to be quiet. Until the 3 saber-toothed rhinos walked away slowly, Luohao uttered a sigh of relief. He said, "Saber-toothed rhinos are level 3 demon beasts, equaling human realm warriors. They move fast and have sharp tusks. Low-leveled warriors would either be injured or be killed once they met saber-toothed rhinos." Shi kept wandering his eyes over those slowly disappearing rhinos, showing an interest in having a fight with them. "Rather than killing the demon beasts here, our goal is to protect Dai. Everybody remember this. Don't bring up any unnecessary ramifications." Luohao seemed to have noticed Shi thoughts, and thus reminded them casually. Shi grinned and nodded to show he understood. "Let's keep going. We need to be watchful here. To keep an eye on the surroundings is more important than moving forward fast. Try to get away from demon beasts and warriors. Don't get ourselves in trouble," Luohao added. Then he advanced with the troop. It was getting dark. Beside a lush tree at the brook, Zhao Xian and the other 2 separated and examined the surroundings with a cautious eye, in case any demon beast showed up. Shi sat upright on the wet ground with a serious look. Bloodlust was lingering in Shi mind like smoke. He had an urge to release it. It was high time he purified the profound qi he absorbed from the 2 star emissaries, thus he was becoming a little impatient. Luohao stood beside Miyu Dai all the times. Frowning, he focused his eyes on Shi, lest this boy took any abnormal action. Miyu Dai looked indifferent, and she stared at Shi for a while. When she saw the aggressive look on his face, she sat down gently and crossed her legs. Setting the ancient zither on her legs, she began to play. Hearing the zither, the concentrated bloodthirst in Shi mind seemed to be resolved by a certain power and gradually faded away. Holding his breath and focusing his mind, Shi operated his profound qi peacefully. 1 hour later, a warm flow gushed out of his meridians all over his body. Shi body trembled. Suddenly, Shi got a severe thirst in his body. The weird power gushing out from his meridians was absorbed by his muscles and bones, before it could mix with the profound qi in his abdomen. The warm stream went into his muscles and bones, and set root in his blood and flesh. Within several breaths, the weird warm stream from his meridians pervaded into his blood, flesh, and bones all over the body, which astonished him a lot. Thus, Shi began to feel the warm stream flowing in his blood, flesh, and bones. Bang! There was a heavy strike in his head, and the next moment, he felt a strange change in his body. Turning pale with fear, he opened his eyes promptly to find his bare arms turning gray, bit by bit. Petrifaction. Shi was frightened. He began to withdraw his attention from his body, not giving a single thought to the sudden change. As his thoughts changed, his hardening body soon went back to normal. Concentrating, Shi looked at the others. Luohao and Miyu Dai were chatting behind a tree not far from him, without noticing what he had just experienced. Relieved, happiness took over his face, as he secretly enjoyed a mirthful time. His body became hard, which meant the Petrifaction martial spirit of the Shi family had awakened. The Petrifaction martial spirit was exclusive to the Shi family. As one's level increased, it became stronger and stronger, to the extent that one won't be damaged by weapons and the impact of profound qi. Before, Shi had thought that the owner of his body didn't possess this martial spirit. It surprised him that it had awakened after he reached nascent realm. He was ecstatic. The Petrifaction martial spirit was beneficial in battles. After petrification, one's body would be as hard as rock, but was still very agile, which would increase one's ability a lot. Apart from Petrifaction, Shi also found he also possessed the immortal martial spirit, which could achieve self-recovery. With the help of these two martial spirits and more training, he couldn't imagine how powerful his body would become. No, Shi frowned and thought, don't martial spirits show up not long after birth? But this body is already 17, and yet my martial spirit can still awaken? Too strange. Or does it have something to do with the weird energy gushing out from the meridians? An idea suddenly flashed in his mind. The activation of the two martial spirits, Petrifaction and Immortal, were somehow related to the blood pool and the changes in his meridians. Shi guessed that the weird stream gushing out from his meridians could stimulate the martial spirit hidden in one's body. With this thought, he was so excited that he wanted to sing out loud and celebrate. A martial spirit was inherited. Generally, it got stronger as one's level increased. There were hardly any other ways to strengthen a martial spirit. A martial spirit was the gift that a warrior was most proud of, and also the vital thing to define a warrior's ability. Warriors trained arduously to improve their martial spirit. But even if one's level had upgraded, there were limitations in increasing the level of a martial spirit. On the Grace mainland, even those legendary god-level alchemists could barely refine pills effective to general martial spirits. Those pills were rare and precious on the Grace mainland, and were believed to exist merely in legends. Nonetheless, the effect those pills had on martial spirits was also quite limited. After all, martial spirits were an inherited gift, which was very hard to change. Surprisingly, the weird warm stream gushing out from Shi meridians seemed to go against the rules. It could virtually stimulate martial spirit and increase its ability. Chapter 20. Steel himself. Chapter 20. Steel himself. Stars were illuminating the dark sky, surrounding the bright crescent moon. The cool moonlight went through the tree leaves and scattered around, illuminating the quiet and dark forest. Di Yalin and Hulong were patrolling around, while Zhao Xian was having a rest, leaning against the tree with stable breaths, eyes closed. Luo Hao was standing next to another ancient tree on alert, never relaxing his vigilance. Among the dense leaves of that tree, Mu Dai was sleeping quietly. After a long day's journey, she was exhausted, for she couldn't operate her profound qi at will. Luo Hao looked up at Mu Dai, who was resting among the leaves, now and then, showing a rare tenderness in his eyes. Duh! Duh! Luo Hao's thick eyebrows frowned, as he saw Shi approaching nearby. He asked in surprise, still awake. Yeah. Shi nodded and answered in a low tone. He stood still beside Luo Hao and asked under his breath, wouldn't it be easy for them to spot us here? Of course not. Luo Hao smiled. There is no settled route through the forest, and demon beasts and warriors are always showing up now and then, so those from the dark world will find it hard to distinguish our tracks. In this area, those demon beasts and warriors are whom we need to pay more attention to. That is to say, they won't find us easily. After pondering a bit, Shi asked again, Uncle Luo, do you need to consume too much profound qi to release your gravitational field? Why do you want to know this? Luo Hao was puzzled. I want to steel myself with the help of your gravitational field. Under the gravitational field, I will have to bear a huge pressure, which will strengthen my body. I want to know my limits. Shi replied seriously. He didn't go with the conventional path. Usual training didn't excite him, so he seeked out passion desperately. To steel yourself by using my gravitational field. Luo Hao's eyes lit up, and he nodded. Great idea. But are you sure you want to try it? If those emissaries found us while you were exhausted, you couldn't even fight back. I don't plan to use my profound qi. Shi smiled. To steel yourself using merely with your body? Luo Hao was shocked. Yes. Luo Hao fell in a deep thought for a long time, and said, you have just reached the nascent realm, so it is beneficial to train your body in a proper way and get used to it. But you haven't strengthened your body before. It is crazy that you want to train in my gravitational field without operating your profound qi. You're sure you can endure that? I want to try. Shi replied calmly. Good. Follow me. Luo Hao nodded and walked away without making a sound. Shi followed him. After they left in silence, Miyudai, who was sleeping on the leaves, slowly opened her eyes. Gazing at the two people beside the river from afar, Miyudai was taken by surprise and puzzlement. She murmured to herself, "Just reached the nascent realm and he wants to steal himself under the gravitational field. Is this guy insane?" Miyudai became more and more confused as she thought about it, so much that she couldn't fall asleep anymore. Out of curiosity, she slipped down the ancient tree dexterously and sneaked over to Shiryen and Luohao in order to see what would happen next. Let's start with the gravitational field at 5 times normal gravity first. Generally, a nascent realm warrior's body can only endure this after undergoing specialized training. You have to do what you are capable of. When you feel it is unbearable, stop the procedure at once. Standing still, Luohao added, "Since it's your first training, run laps around me first. If you can run 10 laps without using your profound chi, your body will strengthen. Remember, do within your limits." After his speech, a violent wave broke out from Luohao's body all at once. In an instant, centering about Luohao, the gravity surged by 5 times. The area around him seemed to have collapsed. The air had become so heavy that one could hardly breathe. An invisible pressure suddenly surrounded him all over. Shiryen felt as if sand had filled all his cells, and his body was carrying hundreds of pounds of weight. The tendons of his knees tightened, and his heart was beating at a faster rate. Under the effects of the increased gravity, all his muscles were under tremendous pressure. His body slowly adapted to the invisible pressure from the increased gravity. However, he found it hard to breathe, even when merely standing still. Holy crap! Shiryen was too astonished when he felt that overwhelming pressure. He thought to himself that anyone who went into Luohao's gravitational field would be severely influenced by it. They wouldn't be able to use their abilities at their best. It was only 5 times of gravity. What would happen if it was increased by 10 times? Realizing the horrifying part of this martial spirit, Shiryen took a deep breath and drove all the distracting thoughts out of his mind. He yelled, and then began to run around Luohao. His body shook as the pressure increased. His feet seemed to be filled with metal and were heavier than 1,000 pounds. Normal running also became the most terrible torment. In the gravitational field, his body couldn't move easily. He felt as if being pressed by a giant. He could hardly breathe. 1 lap. His speed had slowed down by half. 3 laps. He slowed down by half again. 5 laps. Shiryen was not running, instead he was walking. On the 6th lap, Shiryen's face was as red as an apple, while the blue veins on his arms were trembling like small snakes, about to jump out of the skin. On the 7th lap, Shiryen looked like a beast, as his eyes were almost on fire from the lack of oxygen. On the 8th lap, Shiryen staggered. Every step exhausted him. After every step he would quiver. At that time, Luohao couldn't stand it anymore. He shouted, "It is your first gravitational field training. Don't try too hard. You have reached your limit here. Enough. Stop. Or you will be dead tired." Shiryen raised his head, while his eyes looked as if they were bleeding. He said in a grave tone, "Hee hee. That was interesting. Let's go on." Luohao stood aghast and could only come up with the idea conclusion. This guy went insane. In the bushes not far from them, Miyudai was speechless, her mouth covered by her hand. She had never met someone like Shiryen before. Shiryen didn't reply Luohao. After another beast-like haul, he continued to step forward. With his face showing extreme stress, he finished another lap. By the last lap, his body was swaying. He had a quiver in each step and could fall any time, as if he would die at any moment. With his body in that state, he finished another lap, step by step. After that, he got a weird smile on his face. Waking from his astonishment, Luohao was relieved when he saw Shiryen was okay. He was about to withdraw the gravitational field before advising Shiryen. Miyudai pressed her mouth with her hand and had an amazed look in her attractive eyes. She had never thought that Shiryen would achieve this extreme challenge, even if he was at the nascent realm. Another lap. Shiryen yelled. "What?" Luohao's body shook greatly, and his eyes grew as sharp as knives. He shouted, "Enough. Don't fool around. Before Luo Hao withdrew the gravitational field, Shi continued to walk unexpectedly. He was staggering and finally dropped on the ground. Luo Hao was just about to shout when he found Shi was using both his hands and feet, crawling like a demon beast. He seemed to be seeking death on purpose. After about half an hour, Shi finally made it to the end, as slow as a snail. Mu Dai stared at him from the bushes, completely stunned. Chapter 21, Pervert. Chapter 21, Pervert. Shi lay on the ground on his back with his limbs spread. His face was red, as though he were bleeding. He was panting heavily and his body was twitching every now and then. Looking at the sparkling stars above, Shi could feel every cell of his body trembling. As his body twitched, his muscles, veins, and bones were all expanding and contracting regularly. Not using his profound qi, he closed his eyes slowly and began to feel the fantastic shift in his body, the amazing quivers in the muscles and ribs, the destruction and reconstruction of cells, and the slow increase in strength. As a wild fanatic for extreme sports, Shi knew that reaching this limit this time was merely the beginning of next adventure. The limit of a human body could always be broken and be surpassed time and time again. The potential of human body was infinite. Those extreme sports experiences had taught him that only by breaking the limit could he obtain rapid progress. With his eyes closed, he could clearly sense the changes happening in his muscle fibers, even without operating his profound qi. Sensing it carefully, Shi soon found the immortal martial spirit in his body beginning to work. It was repairing his body in an incredible way, reconstructing and strengthening his torn muscles. Rigorous training under increased gravity enhanced one's explosive force. Only when the muscles tore under these extreme conditions could they become bigger, more powerful, and more explosive after reconstruction. As a fanatic for extreme sports, Shi was so aware of the truth, which had been verified by his repeated practices. He knew the fastest way to strengthen his muscles. Feeling the effects of his immortal martial spirit beginning to reduce the pain in all his muscle fibers, Shi struggled to sit up. He took the food out of his bag and began to wolf it down, feeling happy with his progress. Intensive exercise consumed too much of his energy. He had to eat a lot of food to recover quickly and improve his power. The dry meat was eaten and slipped into his guts, where it was quickly digested and became nutrition. In a very short time, he had finished enough food for 5 people. As he felt the changes in his body, his smile became broader. After exercising his limbs for a while, he closed his eyes and began to circulate his profound qi quietly. As the profound qi moved, Shi felt a slight quiver in his body. Just as he had expected. The profound qi was flowing in his meridians virtually 30% faster than normal. His body became more sensitive after the extreme stress and likewise, his meridians became abnormally dynamic. His weak meridians seemed to be absorbing the profound qi flowing through them, and with that energy, his meridians expanded and became firmer. Shi had presumed long ago that strengthening the body was as important as training the profound qi. The two were complementary. Once the body was strong enough, the profound qi would condense faster. The stronger the body, the more beneficial it was when operating and condensing profound qi. So maybe the 2 martial spirits hidden in his body would enhance as well. His first attempt had successfully verified Shi hypothesis, so he was grinning from ear to ear. In the thick grass far away. Dai, why are you here? You should have a good rest. Get plenty of sleep, so your martial spirit recovers. Luo Hao had noticed Mu Dai when he was training Shi with his gravitational field. As Shi was sprawled on the ground exhausted, Luo Hao came to Mu Dai secretly and complained. I couldn't sleep, so I am just walking around. I just happened to see you training. Mu Dai smiled gently in fear. She paused and said with a naughty smile, Uncle Luo, was it too much for him? I remember that when you trained Zhao Xan, you had just tripled the gravity. Zhao Xan was at second sky of the nascent realm then, and had the experience of body strengthening before. Why did you quintuple the gravity for this guy? Wearing a bitter smile, Luo Hao shook his head and sighed. I used the quintuple gravity at the very beginning to stop him from wasting energy and make him quit. Who would have known that he was insane? I was shocked in the end too. I tried to stop numerous times, but he wouldn't agree. You mean, you just tried to scare him in the beginning, so he won't ask you to train himself later on? Mu Dai rolled her eyes and felt quite speechless. Yep. Luo Hao sighed again. You know, to control the gravitational field consumes a lot of profound qi, and during that, I can't be distracted. I neither wanted to waste my own profound qi, nor wanted him to be paralyzed tomorrow, which would slow our journey. Who would have known that he is a lunatic? So, Uncle Luo, how many laps did you presume that he could have managed? 4 laps. Luo Hao lifted 4 fingers and said in a heavy voice, average warriors who have just stepped into the nascent realm without any systematic body training can only manage 4 laps in the quintuple gravitational field, 5 laps at most. That guy is so small and thin, so I thought he would ask me to stop on the 4th lap. But he finished 11 laps. Mu Dai got a weird expression on her face. She couldn't help but take a glance at Shi from afar, who was sitting there as firm as a mountain and training again. God. He is upright again. What? He can still move. Luo Hao was stunned as he glanced over at Shi. He shook his head and said, lunatic. This guy is a lunatic. Too reckless. I guess he couldn't even move tomorrow. With this intensive training, he would find his body hurting everywhere tomorrow. I bet we will have to adjust our plan tomorrow. Well, let it be. What an unruly guy. Mu Dai shook her head and smiled subtly. The next morning, before the sun rose, there was very heavy fog. Dai, come down. It is time to set off. Under the ancient tree, Luo Hao called out to Mu Dai softly. I want to sleep more. Mu Dai murmured as if in dreams. Why so early today? Weren't you sure that he couldn't move today? He is waiting for you. Luo Hao said in a very low voice, his face still trying to control his surprise. 10 minutes ago Shi came to him asking for enough food for 3 people. Right in front of them, Shi wolfed down the food and patted his belly, sighing with satisfaction. Let's go. Luo Hao was totally astonished. He glared at Shi with frightened eyes for a few minutes before he murmured to himself, Pervert. That guy is waiting for me too? Mu Dai murmured, rubbing her eyes unwillingly. Yes, he is more energetic than anyone. He smiled bitterly. What? Mu Dai suddenly woke up, astonished. She looked for Shi under the tree, to find him sitting straight like an arrow with bright eyes. The same as Luo Hao, she murmured, Pervert. Shi scrutinized his own wearing and was sure that there was nothing strange. He frowned, Uncle Luo and Miss Mu, which part of me looks like a pervert? Your whole body. Mu Dai chuckled and got in a joyful mood. Her chuckle seemed to bring a spring that made the beautiful scenes in the dark forest seem dim in comparison. Zhao Xian and Hulong were fascinated with Gugu eyes, but they soon realized their misdemeanor and lowered their heads to cover it up, not daring to look into Mu Dai's eyes directly. Shi narrowed his eyes and wandered his burning eyes on Mu Dai's beautiful face audaciously. Miss Mu, if I were a pervert, I would put my hands on you first. So be careful tonight, I would be unable to control myself. You should scream loudly then. I love women's crazy screams so much. How dare you? Yalin sniffed. Oh, sorry, I forgot there is another pretty woman. Maybe you are angry because I ignored you. Trust me, I will go for you too. Don't be jealous now. Shi pretended that he just realized that and patted his head to show regret, as if he had forgotten something important. Ha ha. Ha ha ha. Mu Dai held her stomach and burst into laughter in the tree, almost falling down. She pointed at Shi and giggled, You funny guy. Why are you so hilarious? Ha ha. Yalin was dumbstruck and then chuckled too, feeling helpless when it came to Shi. Zhao Xian and Hulong were taken over by confusion too, and their facial expressions couldn't be stranger. They just couldn't understand that even when they always acted politely with the 2 girls and didn't dare to do anything to offend them, they 2 girls scarcely smiled at them. While Shi showed not the slightest hint politeness towards the girls with his giddy words, but the girls smiled at him a lot. What the hell is with that? Oh! Luo Hao glanced at Shi Yan strangely and smiled. Well, stop it now, let's move. Chapter 22, Shi Family. Chapter 22, Shi Family. The Merchant Union, Tianyin City. In the stone room of the Shi family. Yang Hai, who was a little stout, was sitting on a stone stool with a serious face. Eyes narrowed, he was checking an account book, page by page, and reporting the recent month's production status of the quarry to the family head of Shi Family, Shi Jian. Though Shi Jian was in his 70s, he looked in good health. Being the family head of Shi Family, he was simply wearing a plain gown which was suited to martial training. Sitting on a brown stone stool, he had a calm demeanor and was listening to Yang Hai earnestly. After Yang Hai illustrated the case, Shi Jian frowned and commented, "Hai, the production in recent months has literally decreased by 20%. What's up? It's all because of the Mo and Ling families." Yang Hai sighed. Many skilled pitmen were lured away by their high salary. We are now lacking in pitmen. We were in bad situation due to the secret fight with the two families. Those pitmen feared that we would be beaten by them, plus they were being offered a higher salary, so the pitmen turned to them. Humph. Shi Jian sniffed. They are doing that deliberately. Since Mo Yanyu and Ling Xiaofeng got engaged, the Mo family and Ling families have gotten closer and closer. The Ling family has also been interfering in our secret fight with Mo family. They must have come to an agreement, or Mo family couldn't compete with us. Master, when do we strike back? Yang Hai asked. No worries. I have a plan. Shi Jian looked assured, then he paused and frowned. Is my little bastard grandson Shi Yan still is not back home? No. I was just about to mention that. Yang Hai looked disturbed. That stupid boy said he would go to the dark forest before he left. It's been a year since he left home. I received information a couple of days ago that Mo Chaoga and Mo Yanyu were in the dark forest as well. I'm afraid he has had an accident. He didn't take any capable escorts with him. His mother Qing died early, and we have this single child. I am so worried. Shi Jian frowned and kept silent for a long while. Then he sighed. This boy was born without inheriting the Petrifaction martial spirit of the Shi family, and nor was he fascinated by martial arts. Instead, he was crazy about those odd things, and would always goof around. Troublesome. Master, it's all because of my humble bloodline. If I had a martial spirit, Qing would have given birth to a kid with a martial spirit. Yang Hai was ashamed. It's all doomed. Shi Jian shook his head. Hai, I found you by the endless sea. Though you are not my own, I treat you as my own son, or I wouldn't have betrothed my daughter Qing to you. Yes, you don't own a martial spirit, nor did you train in martial arts, but you play a key role in the development of Shi family and the management of our quarries. We wouldn't have accumulated so much wealth if it hadn't been for you. Though you don't know about martial arts, you contribute a lot to the family. But nowadays, a strong warrior is much more valuable than anything. Yang Hai smiled and mocked himself. If I had a martial spirit, I would have trained in martial arts. And if Yan had inherited the Petrifaction martial spirit from his mother, he too would have trained in it. But a martial spirit is inborn. Shi Jian nodded and sighed. Yes, it's true. A strong warrior is more valuable than anything. Family head, could that little boy be in danger? Yang Hai couldn't help but worry. He shouldn't be. Shi Jian thought for a while and added, my grandson isn't into martial arts, so the Mo family have never set their eyes upon him. Neither Mo Chaoga nor Mo Yanyu have seen him before. So it's not possible that they would harm him. But I still feel something's wrong. He should have been home. Well, I will tell those soldiers in Silent Town to keep an eye for him. Silent Town was beside the dark forest. Once they spot Shi Yan, they will let us know. So don't worry. Thank you, family head. Why? Your son is also my grandson. Shi Jian glared at him and berated. How many times have I told you? Don't call me family head. I'm your adoptive father, and also your father-in-law. You can call me anything but family head. I got it, father. Okay. The dark forest. A silent night. Luo Hao is standing still on the side of the track, with a quintuple gravitational field surrounding him. It was getting very hard to breathe. Shi was perspiring from all over his body as he pounded in the air and jumped around Luo Hao. Blue veins showed up on his face and neck, quivering like little snakes. In the grass, Miyu Dai was gazing at them secretly, biting a straw in her mouth. Guess how long could he endure today? Di Yalin asked as she walked up and sat beside her. You finished your task today? Miyu Dai chuckled, without replying her. Zhao Xian took over. It was really dangerous. A single-horned silver snake was twining around the tree trunk, and I didn't notice it. I was almost bitten by it. If I hadn't moved quick enough, I would be dead right now. Di Yalin still looked terrified. She cursed, more and more demon beasts are appearing these days. We have to be careful. We have met 5 groups of demon beasts in the past 3 days. They walk around especially at night. You'd better take me with you next time you want to peep. Or you will be in danger. You just wanted to say the last thing, right? Miyu Dai giggled. Huh, you found it out. Di Yalin didn't disguise herself and said, that guy is really something. He broke his limit every day in the past 3 days and got more and more stamina. Though I'm at the 3rd sky of the nascent realm, I don't dare break the rules in the quintuple gravitational field of Uncle Luo. This guy is literally insane. Every time, he won't stop until he faints. Nuts. Nuts. His endurance is most shocking. Miyu Dai shook her head slowly as her eyes glimmered. Yes, and he recovered in such a short time. Unbelievable. He is only at the 1st sky of the nascent realm, but he has incredible recovering ability. Di Yalin was confused too. This guy has so many secrets. Miyu Dai thought for a while and murmured, I have never seen anyone greedier than him. He almost ate up all our food in the past 3 days. I'm now worried about food. He is such a rice bucket asterisk. Di Yalin laughed, but he talks in a funny way. Any of his casual talks could amuse us a lot. And he has so many novel ideas that I have never heard of. He says that kings must be voted in by citizens, and merchants dominate a country. By the way, he even composes sarcastic poems. I'm really confused. How could this 17-year-old boy be filled with so many odd things? And it is this 17-year-old guy who looks as if he wants to eat us when he casts his eyes upon us. I have never seen such possessive eyes. Bastard. Too bad. Miyu Dai grinded her teeth and made an action of cutting in the air. I would let him know how capable I am. Till your martial spirit is back, huh? What's the big deal to let him look at us? We don't lose anything. Also Zhao Xian and Hulong, the cowards, pretend to not be ogling at my ass when I am right in front of them. I despise them more. Compared to them, that bastard is bolder. I like it. Di Yalin laughed loudly. You are trying to seduce him? Miyu Dai smirked. He is still a kid. Don't seduce him. Have you seen any kid who gives that kind of look? Di Yalin lowered her voice. I am guessing that he is older than he looks. Maybe he had adopted some secret skill to make himself look young. Maybe it's a special secret martial spirit. Could be. Seems we have to be careful. Miyu Dai pondered, and then nodded slowly. Bang! Shi was sprawled on his back. He was totally exhausted. He asked in a raucous voice, how many laps? 15. Luo Hao answered with a complex look. You made actions of jumping and rolling during the 15 laps, which made the pressure much bigger. Young man, you really can bear that? Well, we will know tomorrow. Shi found it even impossible to speak. In the past 3 days, he trained in whenever he had free time. After the arduous training, the meridians in his chest and waist could easily release negative energy at his will, which made him pine away a lot. He almost trained every part of his body to the most, but the hardest part was his brain. At night, he would ask Luo how to lay the quintuple gravitational field, then he could steel himself under the massive stress. 3 days. In those short 3 days, he broke his limit from 11 laps to 15 laps. While running, he also increased the hardness as he jumped and rolled to consume more energy. By undergoing this intensive training, he found his body becoming much more powerful than before. His hands, feet, ribs, muscles, and entrails all became stronger. Every morning, when he woke from his training, his body would be full of explosiveness, and he could jump several meters higher in normal gravity. Even his hands and feet became more agile. He could feel the progress every day clearly, thus he continued the training and wrecked himself crazily. He steeled himself in such strenuous way that his ability increased rapidly, while his profound chi condensed even faster as well. Ayo! Ayo! There came a weird sound from far away. Luo Hao turned pale and cried out, "It's the level 4 demon beast, fire snake." A fire snake is very tough. They don't usually go out at night. Someone must have annoyed them. Uncle Luo, Zhao Xian and Hulong hurried over, looking anxious. "What's up?" Luo Hao yelled. "A troop of warriors are hunting the fire snake, and the latter are approaching toward us. The warriors are hell-bent, thus the fire snakes are totally irritated." Zhao Xian was in a panic. "Shit." Luo Hao took off the broadsword on his shoulder and said, "Take care of Dai." Then he dashed away. Shi Yan, who was suffering all over, sat up immediately and began to operate his profound chi. Eyes lit and cool-minded, he silently gazed in the direction of Luo Hao. Chapter 23. The Tush Mercenary Union. Chapter 23. Tush Mercenary Union. Zhao Xian and Zhao Long dashed toward the bush and encircled Mu Dai. Mu Dai, who had been hiding in the bushes for a long time, stood up ashamed. She took a quick glance at Shi Yan while blushing and guessed she had lost face. But soon she found her assumption incorrect, for Shi Yan didn't even pay attention to her. Instead, he was glaring at the direction of Luo Hao, like a wary beast. After a speedy big circulation cycle by Shi Yan, the pain had reduced bit by bit. Looking serious, Shi Yan tried to recover while focusing on Luo Hao. "Go after it. The fire snake looks very weak now. Catch it. Don't let it go. Fire the arrows. Quick. Shoo. Shoo." From the woods not far away came shouts and wrangles. Arrows flew fast in the air, chasing their targets. Huh. All of a sudden, there was a fire in the woods. The fierce fire covered the area in no time, and heavy smoke rose quickly and twined around the trees, making people unable to breathe. Ka-ka-ka. Bang, bang, bang. Bang. The sound of trees exploding, flying arrows, and fighters on the move all came at the same time from that brook. A fierce battle was going on in the woods. "Someone's there." An unfriendly shout came from the woods. "You want to steal our success. Don't get it wrong. I just don't want the fire snake to hurt my people, so I simply stopped it from running that way." It was Luo Hao's voice. He seemed to have a dispute with someone far away. "Humph. We, the Tush Mercenary Union, have kept an eye on this fire snake for half a month. You'd better not get involved." I said, "I'm not interested in a level 4 demon beast." Luo Hao explained. "Uncle Luo is having words with someone. Let's go and see." Mu Dai raised her head from the bushes and frowned. She was a little worried since she didn't know what was happening there. "Yes, let's go." Hulong grunted. "I have heard of the Tush Mercenary Union. They have a very bad reputation. We can't let them take advantage of Uncle Luo. Then let's hurry." Hearing that, Mu Dai began to panic more. "Okay." Zhao Xian nodded and said to Hulong and Di Yalin, "You still need to encircle Miss Mu when we reach there. Put her safety in the first place, even during fights." "Rubbish. We all know this." Di Yalin was getting impatient. While muttering, the four quietly rushed toward Luo Hao. Shi Yan was not at all worried. He stood up after a few minutes. Feeling the vibrancy of his profound chi in the meridians, he at first moved his hands and feet slowly in order to make sure that they were still flexible after the fatigue. Then he followed the four people at leisure. "Whoa!" One man yelled in surprise, "Beautiful girls, haha, there are 2 beautiful girls. I have lingered here for 2 months and have never seen such beautiful girls. Captain, you had promised that you would let us be satisfied. Don't go back on your word." "Shut up. They are unavailable." Shi Yan walked up slowly and began to look around with a rigid face. On the ground was an 8-meter-long huge snake which had patterns of fire all over its body. Its tail was blazing and its body was covered with arrows. Meanwhile, a large quantity of blood was flowing out of the wound between its eyes. 8 mercenaries in warrior uniforms were standing around the fire snake. They looked robust and rough, and each of them got a tattoo of Tush on their left arm. All of them were at least nascent realm. The captain's short brown hair stood like steel needles. There was a long scar on his left cheek which extended to his neck, making him look extremely savage. When Shi arrived, those mercenaries were staring at Muyu Dai and Di Yalin with lustful eyes. They looked rather infatuated. However, the captain was not looking at the girls at all, but exchanging glances with Luo Hao. The captain's right hand was at the cuff, where silver light was glowing now and then. He was prepared to have a fight. Go home and look at your mama. Under those mercenaries' salacious eyes, Di Yalin couldn't help cursing them. Haha, this woman has a fiery temper. I love it. An uncivilized mercenary with a bare and hairy chest burst into laughter. He patted his thigh and shouted, "Captain, I want this woman. Son of a bitch." Di Yalin drew out the sword beside her waist and posed to fight. Come on. Let me see if you are a real man. Haha, here I am. That big guy was joyful and was about to rush forward. Tuma, Bernard shouted, then he lowered his voice. Don't make a fuss. Everything is negotiable. Okay, Captain. That man with hairy chest, whose name was Tumu, smirked and shook his legs to Di Yalin and laughed cunningly. Bitch, you will know how manly I am when we are naked. I will cut off your balls. Di Yalin shot back. Disgusted, Mu Dai frowned but didn't utter a word. She had gotten used to such remarks. Who let you come here? Luo Hao got a little worried. He knew those mercenaries well. These mercenaries, who stayed here to kill demon beasts, were leading an extremely dangerous life. They could be killed by demon beasts at any time. Under that stress, they didn't care much about morals or laws and did a lot of nasty things. Muyu Dai and Di Yalin were both pretty, and prettiness was the rarest thing in this area. The soft bodies of these pretty girls were the best comfort for those brutal mercenaries, so Luo Hao got a bad feeling at the sight of these men. Shi came up and stood beside Luo Hao silently and began to observe the Tush Mercenary Union. Tuma, the scar-faced captain of the Tush Mercenary Union, Bernard, yelled out viciously, "Take the things." At the same time, he was gazing at Luo Hao and Shi with cold eyes, silver light glowing from the cuff. Yes, Captain. Tuma stopped teasing Di Yalin and commanded his people to move. Thus, 3 mercenaries walked up with daggers. They operated on the fire snake with blood all over their bodies, ripping the skin, gouging the eyes, pulling out the tusks. They were doing it carefully and skillfully. Bernard and the rest of the mercenaries kept staring at Luo Hao and others. They were all ready to assault them once Luo Hao made any move. Looking rigid, Luo Hao held his glowing broadsword and said, "We don't have a slightest interest in the fire snake. You are busy, we are going." Luo Hao knew Bernard was tough, so he don't want to ask for trouble. To bring Muyu Dai to a safe place was most important. Seeing they were leaving, Bernard was a little stunned, as he called out, "Wait." Luo Hao got serious as he turned around. He said, "Hey buddies, I don't want to have a dispute with you guys. You guys don't go too far either." "Yeah well," Bernard smirked, the muscles on his face relaxing. "Friend, you got us wrong. I just want to make a deal with you. Nothing else." "What deal?" Luo Hao was surprised. "What about 1 fire snake's eye, 3 tusks, and 2 meters snakeskin for the 2 women?" Bernard pointed at Muyu Dai and Di Yalin and smiled. "My people haven't touched women for a long time. They need to be satisfied. All women here have a price, and my offer is quite fair. What do you think?" F********. Hulong's eyes were almost on fire. Zhao Exine grunted. Muyu Dai bit her teeth as well, while Di Yalin waved her sword and shouted, "Come if you dare." Only Shi kept silent as he gazed at the captain. Luo Hao stretched out his hand to stop Di Yalin and shook his head to her. Then he turned around and said to Bernard, "I'm sorry. They are my friends, not my possessions. They can't be traded." "Well, never mind." Bernard nodded and said casually, "See you." "See you." Luo Hao looked into his eyes, then yelled, "Let's go." Luo Hao glared at Di Yalin, suggesting her to keep silent. Zhao Xian and Hulong were both furious, but they could do nothing after seeing Luo Hao's eyes. They had to encircle Mu Yudai and leave. Shi Yan touched his own nose and left without a word too. Captain, the same as usual? After Luo Hao and others disappeared into the woods, Tuma giggled. We know what type of woman you like, so we won't touch that little girl. But that hot bitch, Captain, you have to give her to us. Bernard's eyes got colder and colder, and he nodded gently. Collect the things on the snake first, and then do what we usually do. Got it. Tumu smirked. That woman wanted to cut my cock. I would her to death later. She is a beautiful flower with thorns, and though lower than you, she is at the third sky of the nascent realm. You need to be careful. Don't fail miserably in an easy task. Bernard grunted. Remember to kill those men first. Don't merely indulge yourselves in the woman. Be cautious. Don't let anyone run away. Yes, Captain. Chapter 24. Trouble. Chapter 24. Trouble. Uncle Luo, why are we retreating? As they were marching, Di Yalin cut tree trunks with her sword and was angry. How dare that bastard tease Miss Mu and me? Shit. Nothing would have happened if you two didn't show up. Now we've gotten ourselves into trouble. Alas. Luo Hao sighed and said, stop babbling. Let's leave. Hopefully we can escape it. Uncle Luo, we've already left. What's wrong? Mu Yudai got confused. It's more complicated than what you think. Luo Hao shook his head. None of those mercenaries are good men. That captain was so salacious when he looked at you that he wouldn't let it go easily. The 4 mercenaries operating on the snake appeared to be indifferent when we left, but they were much more interested in you. Thus it's unreasonable that they would give up. They must know their captain's plan well. Mu Yudai's pretty face turned pale. Uncle Luo, are you guessing that they would pursue us? Not a guess. I'm very sure about it. Luo Hao sighed again. They didn't take action at once, for they were considering the materials on the demon snake. Other warriors and mercenaries may have come up to collect their prey when they were fighting with us. So surely they will chase us after they get the material on the snake. The Tush mercenary union have a really bad reputation. I have heard about them doing a lot of bad things. Uncle Luo is right. Hulong added. Uncle Luo, sorry, we were worried about you. Mu Yudai was in low mood. I understand. Luo Hao replied. However, he suddenly stopped and put Mu Yudai down gently. Thus, Shi Yan stopped as well. He asked while frowning, what happened? They are pursuing us. Luo Hao glanced at Shi Yan in appreciation and nodded, replying with a rigid face, must be them. Uncle Luo, what should we do now? Hulong was furious and he yelled, they went too far. Let's fight against them like hell. Luo Hao looked serious. He thought quickly and ordered, Di Yalin, carry Dai and go first and send signals to us all the way. Young man, you go with them and be careful. Choose untraversed regions and don't get into high-level demon beast areas. What about you? Shi Yan asked calmly. We 3 will stay. Without Dai amongst us, we can do sneak attacks easily. After delaying them, we will catch up. Those guys won't fight with us if they don't see the girls. They should stop soon. Luo Hao replied fast. Got it. Shi Yan nodded and smiled lightheartedly. Don't worry, uncle. Where there are these 2 pretty girls, there will be me. Okay, go. Luo Hao replied. Di Yalin wanted to stay and fight, but she had to compromise under Luo Hao's firm gaze. She stamped on the ground with regret and crouched to carry Mu Yudai. Then she ran to the thickest part of the forest. After some hesitation, Shi Yan took out a paper bag from his bag and put it in Luo Hao's hand. I got this poisonous powder by accident. It is called 7 snake saliva, which is made from poison fluid of 7 types of snakes. It's very easy to use. Just wipe it on the weapon, and when it cuts even a little it will take effect. Before Luo Hao could say anything, Shi Yan smirked and advanced in the direction of Di Yalin. Uncle Luo, wasn't it too mean? A warrior has his own self-esteem. To use poison is contemptible. Zhao Xian frowned and looked at the poison powder in Luo Hao's hand with contempt. Then he murmured, we know nothing about that boy, and he's got so many vicious things. It's dangerous to let him stay with Miss Mu. Zhao Xian, there are not many rules here, so cut the crap. We would have been dead bodies if it weren't for his bone-chilling powder, and you wouldn't be here talking about righteousness. Luo Hao reproached angrily and said, everybody gets to keep some powder, but don't use it too early in case it irritates those mercenaries. If it gets worse, don't hesitate to wipe it on weapons. You can reproach that boy again only when you two are still alive, understand? Got it. In the woods. Bernard and his 7 people were flying fast in the woods with cold faces and obscene smiles. Shoo, shoo, shoo. Arrows flew out from the woods one after another, hard and quick, which made the mercenaries stop and react. Bernard stopped at once and smirked. His right hand in the cuff finally stretched out. It was a shining silver iron hand. Rays of silver light exploded as the iron hand stretched out, and the light then divided into 7 crescent knives in the air, and flew toward Luo Hao's hiding spot with a rush. Ka. Tree branches in the woods exploded, and fell one after another as the knives flew by. The knives let out frightening silver lights and bombarded heavily in the place where Luo Hao hid himself. Bang, bang, bang. An ancient tree collapsed suddenly after being cut by the knives. Luo Hao's figure showed up for a moment and disappeared into the woods again quickly. Tumu, go ahead with Kinmo. We will take care of this side. Bernard smiled cunningly with his heavy face and added, the superior warriors are all here, while the women and that boy have run away. Remember, I need the women alive. If you kill them, you won't get even 1 crystal coin. Be at ease, Captain. I promise I will bring that woman to you clean and beautiful so that you can make her serve you however as you like. Tomu laughed loudly. Kinmo, let's go first. Haha. That hot chick, haha, I will have her first. You are lucky today. You can taste her after me. Yeah, I can't wait anymore. The ugly mercenary with pimples all over his face laughed too as he advanced with Tomu. It's bad. Luo Hao was stunned and was about to send a signal. He didn't presume that Bernard was so experienced with this kind of situation. Bernard saw through Luo Hao's plan at once and sent people to chase Dialin pointedly. Stay here. Bernard sneered as he rushed to Luo Hao. My friend, you wanted to delay us, didn't you? Now I won't leave, so don't you leave as well. Let's trade blows and exercise our muscles. As soon as Bernard moved, the other mercenaries separated too to search for Hulong and Zhao Xian's traces. Carrying Liu Dai on her back, Dialin shuttled back and forth in the woods. Every time she touched the ground, her well-shaped long legs would pedal on the earth, and thus her bony body bounced several meters high, like a female leopard pursuing its prey. While up in the air, her short skirt under her armor flew with the wind, and her plump ass showed an attractive shape, looking extremely elastic. Shiryen was staring at her figure joyfully and couldn't stop praising her hot body. No wonder those mercenaries couldn't get rid of Dialin in their mind. Little bastard, stop looking at my ass. Take care of the surroundings. Keep an eye on any demon beast trails around here. Dialin seemed to have a pair of eyes on her back as she shouted while running. It's fine. Shiryen broadened his mouth. There are no trails of demon beasts for the time being, but it seems that someone is chasing us. I seem to hear their light steps. Someone's after us? Dialin was stunned. It couldn't be. The 3 including Uncle Luo are there. They weren't able to stop those crazy dogs. Shiryen then stopped, bent down, and leaned his ear against the ground. He said with a serious face, Uncle Luo wasn't able to stop all the crazy dogs? 2 of them are almost here. Dialin was astonished as she stopped in front. She observed with a pale face, Kid, carry Miss Mu and leave fast. I will stay and fight with them. No, I will stay. Shiryen shook his head, took a deep breath, answering in a low voice, I was just thinking about testing the results of my recent training. Keep going, I will catch up. By the way, I will leave some signs as well, in case Uncle Luo Hao loses trace of us after dumping those mercenaries. You, on Dialin's back, Mu Dai turned her head to Shiryen and gazed at him numbly. Then a glow crossed her eyes, and she said with a complicated look on her pretty face, you could have gotten out of this trouble, originally. I know. Shiryen smiled, but for you, I'm in. I still owe you a lot. Once I pay it back, I will leave even if you ask me to stay. Waving his hand, he urged Dialin, "Sister, what the hell are you doing? Move." Dialin felt it a little heartbreaking to see him again, so she turned her head away and said, "Little bastard, live on happily. If you can catch up again, I will allow you to touch my butt." In an instant, she stamped on the ground and dashed out rapidly. "Haha, then keep yourself clean and wait for me." Shiryen laughed and shouted to her, "I will be back soon." Dialin quivered and almost fell. She gritted her teeth and cursed in her mind with blushed face, "This damn bastard." Chapter 25, Ghost. Chapter 25, Ghost. With his dagger, Shiryen first engraved ugly patterns of butterflies on 2 tree trunks. Then he climbed into one of the trees, cut down a branch as thick as an arm, chopped it into 5 pieces, sharpened one end of each piece, and wiped the 7 snake saliva onto the sharpened ends casually. It took him 2 minutes to do all these things. After 2 minutes, Tumu and Kinmo, the 2 mercenaries from the Tush mercenary union, showed up as expected. Tumu and Kinmo didn't even take Shiryen and the 2 women seriously. They were still discussing how to enjoy Dialin with salacious faces while shuttling in the woods. Shoo! Shoo! Sharpened branches went through dense leaves and flew toward Tumu and Kinmo. Tumu didn't care about it at all. He wielded his axe aimlessly and chopped 2 tree branches down. Then he laughed happily. "Look at this guy. Too shallow, haha. He treated us with these tree branches to lose our face. Poor guy." Kinmo shook his head and sneered. Shoo! 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 Another 3 tree branches came over mightily. Tumu got a little impatient that he drew a semicircle in the air with his axe, which was as long as an arm, and 3 tree branches fell on the ground in the silver light. Shiryen showed up from among the bushes slowly and stared at them coldly. "You 2 will fight together, or come up one by one." Narrowing his eyes, Tumu raised his head and examined Shiryen. Then he shook his head disappointedly. "A young kid. Of the nascent realm at most. You talk big, but have limited ability. Sorry, but I'm not interested." After saying that, Tumu turned his eyes away from Shiryen and walked away with his voice. "Kinmo, take care of it quickly. Catch up to me soon, or I will that bitch twice." Ha ha ha. Kinmo sniffed, then threw his huge wolf tooth stick onto the ground mightily, which stuck deep in the earth. "Kid, come down. I won't use my weapon, and don't let me climb the tree to catch you. I'm in a hurry. Be quick." "Yeah, I'm in a hurry too," Shiryen replied with indifference and calmness in his eyes. Then he jumped down the ancient tree at once and threw his dagger out with all might into the earth beside that wolf tooth stick. Bang! Shiryen stood 10 meters away in front of Kinmo, raised his hands and waved at Kinmo. "I won't use a weapon either." "Hey kid, you're rather audacious." Kinmo broadened his mouth as all the pimples gathered on his face. With vicious eyes, he rushed toward Shiryen at once. All of a sudden, Kinmo's hands swelled and blue veins popped on his fists. All his fist strikes were so heavy-handed that they were making a hoo-hoo sound in the air. His aggressive assault created numerous images of the fists. After 5 steps, there appeared dozens of fist prints ahead of Kinmo. Mortal-level martial skill. Shiryen narrowed his eyes and began to operate his profound chi calmly, clearing his mind of any other thoughts. There was only the fist images in his eyes and only the idea of kill Kinmo in his mind. Bang! With a heavy shake in his mind, he suddenly entered a different world. His eyes, ears, and body suddenly got much more sensitive than before. All of the surroundings grew much clearer. Gazing at Kinmo, he could specifically sense the speed and rate at which Kinmo's profound chi flew in his arm. The fist images which had pervaded the air disappeared in an instant, and the air got clearer. Only Kinmo's waving fists were left in his eyes. Furthermore, he could even see the path his fists were traversing. After taking a deep breath, Shiryen shouted, and his arms contracted and dried at a speed which could be seen by naked eye. Soon his arms were twined with vague, white smoke. At the same time, from his neck, his skin began to petrify into gray rock, which looked as hard as iron. Dim black light spilled from his skin and covered all of his skinny body. Kinmo's iron fists, with the power to shatter rocks, struck toward Shurian's chest. They twisted, and after being struck by Kinmo's iron fists, it turned into dark light spots, exploding in an instant. Kinmo's fists went through though with less power, and struck Shurian's chest heavily. Bang! Car! The sound of striking and bone breaking came at the same moment. Kinmo's face twisted at once. The nasty pain on his fists made Kinmo realize that it was not Shurian's chest, but his fists that had been splintered. Waving the painful arms with a hideous face, Kinmo looked at Shurian, who was as cold as a rock, rather terrified. He seemed to remember something at that moment, thus shouted, "Petrifaction martial spirit from the Shi family. You're from the Shi family of the Merchant Union. Brilliant." Shurian smiled with coldness. Kinmo realized that he was at a disadvantage and thus tried to run, but it was too late since he was too close to Shurian. Shurian stretched out his hand like lightning and held Kinmo's neck. The white fog around his arm, containing all the negative emotions, flew into Kinmo's body, all at once. Kinmo was so frightened that he felt himself fall into hell and screamed while quivering, "No! No! No!" Kinmo kept screaming hard and waved his iron fists aimlessly, as if he couldn't see a thing, and tried to defend from the ghosts which were approaching him. Shurian had released his hand a long time ago. The white smoke had disappeared and his face had returned normal. He was counting the time in his mind. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. While counting, Shurian walked leisurely to where his dagger was struck. He pulled it out and walked over to Kinmo with light steps. When Shurian counted to 17, Kinmo seemed to be calming down gradually. His eyes were becoming clear and he was about to come around. 17 seconds was far more than enough to kill a person dozens of times. Nodding his head lightly, Shurian got to know more about the situation. He moved like lightning and slashed across Kinmo's neck with precision. Blood jetted out of his neck as Kinmo finally came back to his senses. He stared at Shurian in hatred and fell down with regret. Squatting down beside Kinmo, Shurian wiped off the blood on the dagger with Kinmo's coat and examined Kinmo's body. He found some food, hundreds of purple crystal coins, and the 2 sharp tusks of the fire snake. After putting these things into his bag without any hesitance, Shurian took a deep breath. He felt Kinmo's profound chi had all went into his own meridians. Then he stood up and murmured, "Someone at the second sky of the nascent realm would lose their senses for 17 seconds under the negative power of. This martial skill is really too weird. Maybe the more the negative power is concentrated, the stronger its power." He talked to himself for a while. Then he pulled himself together, took a deep breath and rushed in the direction where Tumu ran to. "Bitch! Too damn hot. Haha, but I love it." Tumu was laughing happily and having a fight with Yalin with his axe. Miyudai's eyes were cold. Cuddling her zither, she looked panicked and seemed to make a difficult decision. The heavy axe looked light as a feather fan in Tumu's hand. As the axe shone now and then, Yalin's short sword was at a disadvantage. Once the short sword touched the axe, Yalin's thin body would shake. Apparently, Tumu had a much stronger profound chi than Yalin. Tumu's axe left shadows in the air as he wielded it, and the shadows entangled Yalin, like rings. Between the light reflected from the axe, Yalin's long hair flew up and down, and her short skirt was shredding, through which her thighs showed up now and then. "Bitch, you know my ability, huh? Don't worry, you will know soon that my best thing is not my martial skill." Ha ha ha. Tumu laughed with joy as he planned to defeat Yalin slowly. He was teasing her deliberately. Yalin was very furious, but she couldn't talk back and could only defend with every effort. "Sister, need any help?" Shurian's casual banter came from the woods all of a sudden. The next moment, Shurian showed up with the dagger in his hand. He wandered his eyes over Yalin's thighs and butt, visible through the cracks on her skirt for a while, and praised, "Round and smooth, plump and cute. Too good. Terrific." Yalin was very surprised. Since she had no time to talk back now, she took a step back and answered loudly, "You bastard. How did you survive?" Tumu's face was frozen and pale. He didn't continue to chase after Di Yalin, but turned his head to Shi Yan and asked in a low voice, "Is Kinmo dead? What do you think?" Holding his dagger, Shi Yan walked toward him step by step, wearing a mysterious smile. As he was advancing, his arms dried up again. The negative power flowed out from his pores and twined around his arms again. Kinmo's profound chi was not all purified, but as Shi Yan began to operate, Kinmo's despair and hatred before his death suddenly gushed out from his meridians, forming the hideous shadow image in front of Shi Yan, which looked just the same as Kinmo. Kinmo! Tumu was so astonished that his robust body quivered. Impossible! In front of Shi Yan, Kinmo's ghostly shadow, which was as light as a feather, was rattling his saber. The dim eyes, which were filled with hatred, showed that he would even want to kill all the people in the world. Di Yalin and Mu Yudai were astonished too. With their thin bodies shaking, they couldn't help screaming, "What the hell is that?" Even Shi Yan himself was astounded. Looking at the ghostly shadow in front of him, he didn't know what to do. Kinmo! Kinmo! What happened to you? Under Kinmo's eyes, which were full of unforgettable hatred, Tumu stepped back and shouted, "I'm your companion. You enemy is behind you." Tumu's cry reminded Shi Yan. His will changed. Now there was only one thought in his mind: to kill Tumu. The negative power around his arm shot out like a weird, pale snake to Tumu. Kinmo's shadow seemed to be stimulated by the negative power and flew lightly towards him and brutally caught him. "Kill!" Shi Yan yelled and rushed out. Surprised, Di Yalin raised her sword and struck toward Tumu too. Chapter 26. The Wager. Chapter 26. The Wager. Tumu's face looked gloomy as he watched Kinmo's face with astonishment. He was frightened. That shadow did not have any substance, but was like a ghost, which made Tumu, a brave and battle-wise mercenary, apprehensive. He took a step back from this abnormal thing and tried to analyze the situation. Shi Yan immediately knew that Tumu was scared as he stepped back. He took the right timing and rushed out with his dagger like a leopard. At the same time, he asked Di Yalin to fight together with him. Though Di Yalin was a little scared too, since she knew that ghostly shadow was released by Shi Yan, she plucked up courage to besiege Tumu. The pale, white light smoke, which contained refined negative power, began to intertwine Tumu. Kinmo's ghostly shadow was following it and went in front of Tumu at once. Tumu suddenly concentrated. Without any hesitation, he began to practice his dense, profound chi of the third sky of the nascent realm with his secret formula. The profound chi gushed into his left hand and exploded into a red fire. In an instant, there appeared a red protective shield of concentrated pure profound chi in Tumu's left hand. That red protective shield was glowing with red light and letting out hot energy, though it was merely as big as a wash basin. This shield, created by pure profound chi, was apparently Tumu's vital martial skill, which required a lot of energy to operate. Just as the protective shield was produced, Tumu was already perspiring hard on his forehead. He must have consumed a lot of energy. The protective shield was sticking on Tumu's left hand. Seeing Shi Yan's negative power pouring toward him, Tumu immediately raised the shield to block the negative power and Kinmo's ghostly shadow. Chi. That strip of white fog containing negative mood, along with Kinmo's ghostly shadow, sparkled after bumping on the protective shield. In the pervading sparkles, the white fog faded away and the ghostly shadow seemed to be melting and dispersed into the air bit by bit. Noticing the shield could melt these two weird things, Tumu became a little relieved. He then sneered cunningly, "Kid, let me see what else you've got." A cold, evil air dispersed from the sparkles with the continuous sound of chi. Unnoticed by Tumu, the air went into his body through his pores. After that sneer, Tumu's face turned dumb and panic welled up from his eyes. A bright light crossed Shi Yan's eyes. According to Tumu's facial expressions, though Tumu had tried to clear the negative power, he couldn't wipe it all away. Some of it had already invaded his mind. Take action. After a loud yell, Shi Yan sped up to his maximum speed. He appeared in front of Tumu all of a sudden, leaving a light shadow in the open air. The dagger, with glowing blue light, stabbed toward Tumu's neck with a rush, which looked as if it was lightning. The protective shield in Tumu's hand was getting hotter and hotter. The temperature almost woke Tumu up from the numbness. Tumu opened his eyes abruptly. Huh. Tumu hauled, thus he suppressed all the negative emotions which had invaded his mind. At the same time, he drew a circle in the air with his axe in the right hand. Ka-chang! Shi-Yan's dagger stabbed into the axe while a nasty explosion came out from the axe. To his surprise, it rushed towards Shi-Yan's arm through the dagger. Shi-Yan's arm became so numb that he realized Tumu's profound chi was very dense. Therefore, he moved the dagger away from the axe quickly. Tumu didn't react to Shi-Yan. Instead, he turned his body like wind and blocked Di Yalin's short sword, which came behind him with his axe. He said with a cold face, "I will **** you as hard as I can." Shi-Yan grew rigid and the bloodthirstiness surged in his mind. Wielding his dagger, his muscles on the legs began to contract slowly as well. Negative power gushed out from his pores on the legs, covering them in a pale fog. As his hands and feet all went through the changes, Shi-Yan couldn't control his bloodthirstiness anymore. He was overwhelmed by the desire for killing, and his eyes were getting more and more red, while his expression became as hideous as a devil from hell. Even Mu Yudai, who was beside him, was so frightened that she covered her mouth with her hand. Ha ha ha. Shi-Yan's breaths got heavier and heavier. He stomped and could feel endless power in his feet. His skinny body advanced 10 meters in 1 second. Like a flying arrow. Fast and mighty. Tumu's axe flew swiftly in the air and made cracking sounds endlessly. It forced Di Yalin to retreat as her arms got more and more painful holding the short sword. She turned weaker and weaker under the severe attacks of Tumu's strong, profound chi. A forceful, murderous air suddenly came from his back. Tumu had a hideous look in his eyes as he struck his axe again, making Di Yalin retreat while trembling. Bang! Tumu kicked his leg impatiently onto Di Yalin's smooth abdomen heavily, and she was kicked about 7 meters away. Di Yalin fell on ground on her back, and she was bleeding severely from her mouth. Her profound chi was disordered, and she lost all her strength at once. Tumu's kick contained a surging explosiveness as his profound chi exploded in an instant. He aimed to drain his fighting capacity slowly so that he could deal with Shi-Yan. Turning around, Tumu brandished his axe with a vicious face. "Kid, I'm gonna slice you into 100 pieces." Shi-Yan ran up like an arrow, and with the help of his impulses, he shifted all of his profound chi into his dagger. As he brandished his dagger, the shadows of the dagger fell like raindrops. Along with it, a cold, vicious power was sent out from the dagger and enveloped Tumu. Humph! Tumu took a deep breath and began to wield the protective shield with his left hand. Warm wind flew out from the protective shield endlessly and drove the cold, vicious air away. Then he took up his axe and struck Shi-Yan's dagger precisely. Bang! With a hard thump, Shi-Yan felt a severe pain in his wrist, when his dagger suddenly flew out and fell down on the earth dozens meters away behind him. Tumu was having a hard time too. The power gushing out from Shi-Yan's dagger was extremely vicious as well. As he defended from it, he retreated with a stagger. At the same time, an air of coldness, evil and panic sprawled through his arms into the brain like a small snake and dragged him into a bloody atmosphere again. Shi-Yan stood still as he saw Tumu, eyes become perplexed, and retreated staggering into the direction of Di Yalin. At that moment, his dagger was dozens of meters away behind him. He would miss the best timing if he went to pick up his dagger and rush to Tumu. Maybe Tumu would have come to his senses by then. That will flashed across in his mind like lightning, and his eyes turned cold. Then he rushed to Tumu with all his strength and captured Tumu's waist with his arms. He pushed up with his legs and pushed Tumu toward Di Yalin with all might and yelled, "Raise your sword." Stab! On hearing his shout, Di Yalin, who was lying on the ground exhausted, saw a huge dark shadow fall onto her. Without any hesitance, Di Yalin summoned all her strength and raised her short sword, which was as long as her arm. Poa! As the sword stabbed into Tumu's heart, he woke up with a severe pain. He flailed crazily and tried hard to keep his balance. The sword stabbed into the back part of his heart, thus his body tilted in the air, and he didn't fall onto Yalin immediately. With the support of the sword, Tuma kept that tilting position magically and didn't fall immediately, as if his legs had rooted in the ground. Tuma struggled with all his strength, but only to find his hands held by Shi tightly. Shi looked rather cool, and he smirked, "Wild dog, you are done." Keeping that position, Tuma shouted, "Bastard! Let go of your hands. The sword stabbed me, it can also stab you. Let go of your hand. You want to die with me?" Tumu was really tough, and he could still raise his leg like lightning under this situation. He kicked his knees into Shi belly heavily. Shi injected his profound chi crazily into his arms. Since he couldn't activate he tried to use the Petrifaction martial spirit. Tumu struck his knees into Shi again and again. Under that heavy striking, the power of Petrifaction seemed to be concentrated in Shi's abdomen, while the other parts of his body turned normal. His abdomen grew gray and was as hard as stone. Under the attacks of Tumu, who was at the third sky of the nascent realm, Shi could still support himself with the Petrifaction martial spirit. Though he felt extreme pain in his abdomen, he didn't spit out blood, and his defensive power became abnormally strong. Yalin, who was under them, then came to notice that Shi and Tumu were hugging tightly. If she thrust her short sword toward them, or Tumu fell down heavily, the sword would go through Tumu's body, and then into Shi's body, sticking them together. Knowing that Shi would be stabbed along with Tumu, Yalin didn't dare act rashly, so she screamed, "Bastard! Release! Wild dog, I'm shorter than you. But you will be the dead one, and I could only lose an arm at most." Shi looked at him coldly with a smile. Then with Tumu's frightened eyes, he threw Tumu and himself with all his might onto Yalin. "Puh! Puh!" The sound of the weapon breaking the flesh and bone came one by one. Yalin was lying on her back, while Tumu was lying on her on his back, and Shi on Tumu. The sword in her hand stabbed through both of them. It went through Tumu's heart, and then forced itself into Shi's right shoulder. Tumu's heart was stabbed through. After several quivers, he died right away with an extremely terrified face. Though his shoulder was broken, Shi looked hideous and still didn't let go of Tumu. After Tumu's profound chi spilled out of his body and flew into Shi, the latter was convinced Tumu was dead. Then Shi released his hands and laid his exhausted and soft body down. Chapter 27. Three Parties Meeted. Chapter 27. The Three Parties Meet. In the woods. The silver light on Bernard's iron hand flew like silk and intertwined together to form a dense, silver light net, which flew to cover Luohao. In the field, Luohao walked swiftly. He drew many odd arcs in the air with his broadsword to tear the light net in front of him into pieces. Bernard looked normal and didn't show the slightest bit of fear. Yet he still kept a distance from Luohao and kept intertwining the silver light to form silver light nets one after another, throwing them towards Luohao. The silver light net was not influenced by the gravitational field. It was still floating in the air, and those which were torn by Luohao's broadsword stuck together again while floating and came around Luohao's body. Seen from afar, Luohao seemed to be in the very center of a broken spider. In the shuttling of his broadsword, those light nets were torn and reconnected again. At the same time, Bernard still kept a proper distance from Luohao and never stopped producing more light nets to envelop Luohao, who was surrounded by more and more light nets. Bernard didn't let go of Luohao. Apparently, he didn't need to use as much effort as he smirked to Luohao. "My friend, why do you have to fight with me face to face? We just want the two women. My people have already followed them." Sure enough, the two women must have been taken away by my people. And you can't escape from The result is very clear. Don't waste your time. If they have an accident, I swear, I will sweep away your Tush mercenary union. With a twisted face, Luohao replied while in the light net, "I will spend the rest of my life chasing you Tush mercenary union, till the last of you is killed." Bernard was surprised. He took a deep breath and nodded. "It seems like I have to kill you now." "Captain! Captain!" There came a surprised cry, "Jork's dead." He was just cut by a sword and was poisoned to death. Bernard became furious as he shouted, "Don't be lenient. Kill them as soon as possible. Shit. Poison. Cut them into pieces and feed them to the demon beasts. Don't leave their bodies." The mercenaries yelled together and began to chase Zhao Xian and Hulong at the same time. Bernard was so angry that he operated with all his might to cover the whole area around Luo Hao, making a final bid for victory. Suddenly, lightning which was as thick as a finger turned into another huge net and fell from the sky, flying towards Luo Hao. Luo Hao was shocked and he turned pale at once. Though he tried hard to wave his broadsword, he couldn't cut down the new net. There were 10 finger-like lightnings glowing in odd light as they twined like magic snakes. Frightened, Luo Hao immediately wielded his broadsword with all his profound qi. Then the broadsword generated a white light which grew into circles and entangled Luo Hao. Qi! Qi! Those finger-like lightnings came toward Luo Hao. As they bumped into the white circles, electric flashes exploded at once. Luo Hao's loss of profound qi sped up several times compared to before. Under the fierce lightning, his energy was consumed quickly and his face turned extremely pale. A sharp sword suddenly appeared above his head, filled with the severe smell of slaughter, and struck on the circles surrounding Luo Hao's body. Bang! Luo Hao's body shook greatly and crimson blood gushed out of his mouth. He staggered and stepped back. Bernards took advantage of this to wrap Luo Hao tightly so that he couldn't move at all. Wang! The sharp sword went through Luo Hao's body, and that crescent emissary with a pale mask on his face finally showed up. Alongside him was Emo Chaoga from the Emo family, who walked out from behind an ancient tree with lightning playing between his fingers. Pooh! 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 The crescent emissary got a brutal look in his eyes as his sharp sword went in and out of Luo Hao's body thrice. The gravitational field faded slowly. Uncle Luo. Zhao Xian's eyes turned red and he cried in deep grief. Arrows flew toward Zhao Xian one after another. His body became like a hedgehog and he fell on ground and died with regret. On Hulong's side, arrows were also flying around him. But they seemed to be not as accurate because instead of killing Hulong, they blocked the people from the Tush Mercenary Union who were chasing Hulong. Seizing this opportunity, Hulong ran away crazily in the wood with red eyes. Uncle Luo and Zhao Xian are dead. Only Miss Mu can avenge them. I must tell Miss Mu. Chase! The people from the Tush Mercenary Union yelled and began to chase, but only to find arrows falling down from the sky and blocking their way. They turned rigid and realized someone didn't want them to chase Hulong, so they searched for that shooter with vicious eyes. Some people with pale masks appeared in the woods, and there were some warriors from the Emo family among them. They were all having arrows with them and looked serious. Why did you help me kill him? Frowning, Bernard asked Emo Chaoga and the other star emissary, I don't know you two, do I? What do you want from me for killing him? We were not helping you. The star emissary walked up and glanced him with cold eyes. Luo Hao was an enemy of the dark world that we were chasing him all this time. It's you who helped us. Emo Chaoga was standing aside and not in a hurry to come up. He frowned and asked, Emissary, you said this is the strongest guy among those who were protecting that bastard. Since he is dead, we don't need to waste time anymore. The star emissary nodded. Don't worry. I left some dark moon fragrance on Hulong and ordered my people to let him go deliberately to become a guide for us. Later we can follow the trail left by the dark moon fragrance and we can find the people we want. Good. Mo Chaoga started to smile. It's not far from our merchant union. After it's done, would you like to have a cup of tea with the Emo family and discuss about the details of our cooperation, emissary? No problem. The crescent emissary nodded. In the past couple of days, the crescent emissary from the dark world had already hooked up with Emo Chaoga, and they had come to a secret agreement. Why did you kill this guy? Bernard waved his hand, and soon his mercenaries crowded around him. For a teenage girl and a skinny boy. Emo Chaoga smiled. I've known the Tush Mercenary Union for a long time. Now I know why you really deserve such a reputation. I'm Emo Chaoga from the Emo family of the Merchant Union. I wonder if you are interested in doing business with the Emo family. What kind of business? Bernard frowned. Of course, money-earning kind. Haha. If you are interested, we can discuss the details. You will not regret it. Emo Chowga laughed. Let's talk about it later. Bernard paused and continued. If there wasn't an accident, my people must have beaten the people you want. We can't do it for nothing. You take the teenage girl and the boy, and we, the Tush Mercenary Union, get that hot woman mercenary, okay? Bernard knew they were tough people, and both the Dark World or Emo family from the Merchant Union have a huge influence. The Crescent Emissary and Emo Chowga, who were in lead, were both at the Disaster Realm, not any lower than him, and those two had come to an agreement. After calculating, Bernard was sure that he could not compete with their joint power and had to step back. Emo Chowga didn't reply, but looked to the Crescent Emissary from the Dark World. The Crescent Emissary's eyes flashed, and he nodded slowly, no problem. Well, let's go get them. Seeing him nodding, Bernard became relieved. He had seen the brutality of those two people, and he didn't dare ask for trouble. Mu Dai crouched and bound up the wound for Shi Yan carefully. With a rigid face, Shi Yan was silent. He sat on the ground and examined the change in the wound on his shoulder, and the purification of Tumu's profound chi in his meridians. He was so focused that he didn't even take a glimpse at Mu Dai. Sometimes he is so lustful, and sometimes he is so righteous, too weird. Mu Dai questions secretly, as generally in recent days, Shi Yan looked at her so audaciously without any disguise. But now they were so close and could even smell the scent on each other, Shi Yan didn't even look at her. She was rather confused. Mu Dai was so perplexed, and she was not sure about Shi Yan's real personality. Narrowing his eyes, Shi Yan concentrated on the changes occurring inside his body. The cells of the wound on his shoulder were very alive. Without doing anything, he could sense they were recovering gradually with the aid of the immortal martial spirit. After Tumu's profound chi was purified in his meridians, the odd negative emotions were generated secretly within them. After operating, he didn't have the slightest amount of strength in his limbs, and they ached a lot, seemingly not recovering in a short time. This familiar side effect made him uncomfortable, but he could do nothing. Dialin, who was resting not far from them, regained her spirit and began to search Tumu's body. 1 minute later, Dialin walked to Mu Dai and Shi Yan with a little bag. There is some food on this guy, some demon beast materials, and 3 star bombs. We don't need the demon beast materials, but the star bombs are rather brutal. Star bombs. Flash crossed Shi Yan's eyes, and he stared at the green balls which were as big as fists. He asked with a lot of interest, "What are they for?" "It will explode once shaken and produce starry blades, which are very sharp and would fly in all directions. The impact is so strong that even a profound chi shield from a human realm warrior couldn't prevent it. It's a type of brutal treasure and is very expensive. These 3 may cost 5,000 of black crystal coins." Dialin explained. "Too brutal. Give it to me." Shi Yan stretched out his hand and asked Dialin to hand it to him casually. "Tata. Ta-da-ta." Heavy steps came suddenly. Dialin got pale and held her short sword cautiously. Shi Yan pushed Mu Dai away a little rudely. He stood up with a grunt with the dagger in his hand, and began to stare at the direction where the sound came. Hulong, with bloody eyes and blood on his chest, staggered toward them. At the sight of Dialin, Hulong burst into tears and cried, "Uncle Luo and Zhao Exine died. Miss Mu, they died tragically. You must avenge them." Chapter 28, The Blast. Chapter 28, The Blast. Mu Dai's slim body shook and she leaned against the tree trunk weakly, tears welling up in her eyes and flowing down her face. All along the way, Luo Hao and Zhao Exine had protected her wholeheartedly. She had only survived until now because of Luo Hao, who was like her spirit. Hearing that Luo Hao and Zhao Exine were both dead, Mu Dai was filled with so much grief that she didn't even want to think about escaping. Dialin's eyes were almost on fire as she clenched her teeth and asked in trembling voice, "Who the hell did that?" Hulong choked with sobs and quickly explained the details. Then he added, "Apart from the Dark World and the Tush Mercenary Union, there were also people from the Emo family from the Merchant Union. That guy released the power of lightning, which was not refined from profound chi. It should be the lightning martial spirit of the Mo family. The Tush Mercenary Union. Dark World. Mo family. Yalin clenched her teeth and uttered word by word. Then she yelled, "They all must pay for that." Shi frowned as he heard about the lightning martial spirit. He realized quickly that the target of Mo family was him. An odd scent suddenly went into Shi mouth and nose, which made him stand up quickly and walk around Hulong. He turned pale and said, "Brother Hulong, you have a strange fragrance on your body. You shouldn't have escaped alive." Kid, what do you mean?" Yalin stared at him. "You wish Hulong was killed." But Hulong realized what he meant after a thought, and he answered with a bitter smile, "So it is. They didn't kill me because they wanted to find you. I thought I got lucky. Haha." Then, before Yalin could stop him, Hulong kneeled down in front of Mu Dai and kowtowed 3 times. He said, "Miss Mu, please live on happily and avenge us." He then stood up and ran away quickly as his lamenting voice came afar, "Leave soon. Take the other way. I will distract them and earn as much time as possible for you." Hulong, Yalin, and Mu Dai wailed loudly. "We should leave right now. Miss Mu, remember the grief and live on well." Shi looked serious as he stretched out his hand to Yalin. "Give the star bombs to me. You leave with Miss Mu. I will catch up to you soon." Yalin's mind became blank because of her friends' deaths. She was dumbstruck for a while, then she handed the 3 star bombs to Shi and asked in husky voice, "What are you going to do?" For now, to ask for some interest for Uncle Luo. Shi went up to Temu's body quickly with an icy face and cut open Temu's belly with his dagger, and then put 2 star bombs inside it. After that, Shi wiped the 7 snake saliva on the belly carefully and turned over Temu's body. Now his body was lying face down. People get curious. Once the people of Tush Mercenary Union come, they won't be able to help but turn over Temu's body. They see him like this. Thus the star bombs will explode. Guess what will happen if his body was turned over heavily? Shi smirked. "I got it." Yalin looked vicious too. The more of them being killed, the better. I also put some poisonous powder on his body. After the star bombs explode, the powder will stick to the blades, and once the blades cut people, they will definitely die. Shi looked cold. "Let's go. We should live on. Or else we can't avenge Uncle Luo." "I hope Hulong is fine," Mu Dai murmured with hazy eyes. Shi was a little sad, for he knew there was no possibility of Hulong surviving. Still, he comforted her. "Don't worry, our trap may damage them badly. Maybe we can still meet up with Hulong." "Really?" Mu Dai asked weakly. Though she knew it was not realistic, she still wished someone could give her an answer, even if it was a lie. "Sure, he will be all right." Shi nodded with certainty and made eye contact with Yalin. Yalin understood what he meant as she carried Mu Dai and ran into the woods. Shi took a deep breath, summoned all of his energy, and caught up in a hurry. A quarter of an hour later, the 3 parties, the Dark World, the Mo family, and the Tush Mercenary Union, appeared together. They reached here by following the scent on Hulong. Tuma. At the sight of the axe beside the body, Bernard realized at once that it was Temu. He was so shocked that he cried, "It's impossible. How could they kill Temu?" "Didn't you say we would just need to collect the people we want when we get here?" The Crescent emissary grunted with cold eyes. "Luckily, I had left the dark moon fragrance on that guy, or else we would have needed to search for them everywhere." Bernard was rather confused as he ordered, "So a song, turn Temu over and check him. It was that boy who killed him." Mo Yanyu reminded Mo Chaoga in a very low voice, "Everyone who was killed by him will be drained. There must be poison on that boy's weapon. That boy is something." Mo Chaoga nodded and reminded her, "Be careful later. Don't become impulsive." "Got it." As they were talking, Zuasong, a member of the Tush Mercenary Union, had already run to Temu's body on Bernard's order. Zuasong grasped Temu's shoulder and turned his body over, and was just about to examine it. Thud! The back of Temu's body kicked on the ground heavily. Bang! Bang! A severe blast exploded out. Temu's body ruptured into thousands of pieces in an instant. Thousands of blades mixed within Tumu's flesh and blood flew out from his body like stars. As the blast was unexpected, those blades covered with flesh and blood shot toward everybody directly. As the Tush mercenary union stood closest to Tumu, they were hit first. Due to the flying blades, 3 mercenaries turned into honeycombs, with bloody holes appearing all over their bodies. Zuasong, who had turned Tumu over, was blasted apart and his flesh and blood was mixed with Tumu's, flying in all directions. The Dark World emissaries and people from Mo family didn't expect such a development, and thus they also didn't escape from it. Though they were dozens of meters away, the warriors were injured as well, especially those of the elementary realm from the Mo family. They were cut by blades before they could defend themselves. Miserable screeches continued. The blast from the 2 star bombs made it hell in this area. Flesh and blood filled the air. Limbs and entrails were spread all over on the ground. Amidst the terrifying howls, everybody was panic-stricken. Seeing that picture, Mo Yenyu, who was protected by Mo Chaoga, couldn't stand anymore. She turned pale and vomited. Some warriors from the Dark World and Mo family were only cut by blades. They thought themselves lucky. But soon they felt pain in their body and began to lose their vision. Damn it! Poison on the blades. Mo Chaoga looked as if been stomped on by someone. He stared at the warriors from Mo family and shouted, "Cut off your wounded flesh. Fast! Fast!" The huge man Johnson's arm was cut by a blade, so it was bleeding badly. Johnson was so terrified that he clenched his teeth and cut half of his left arm off. He howled and kneeled down. "Miss Mo, please bind this up for me." "Oh!" When Mo Yenyu stood up and saw Johnson's dismembered arm, she got sick and began to vomit again. Looking at the flesh, entrails, limbs, and green bodies on the ground, Bernard boiled with rage, and his eyes were filled with murderous desire. He will eat whoever did all this alive. Among them, the Dark World lost 3 people, while the Mo family lost 5. Since Bernard was closest to Tumu, he suffered the biggest loss, for all his people were dead. He was on his own now. "I'm gonna kill them. I'm gonna kill them. I'm gonna kill them." Bernard kept howling like a crazy demon beast. "Humph." The Crescent emissary grunted and said to Mo Chaoga, "Let's keep chasing. Leave him alone." He lost people and blamed Bernard for it. If Bernard didn't order Zuasong to turn over Tumu's body, there wouldn't be such a crazy blast. "Let's keep chasing." Mo Chaoga nodded and left with the people from the Dark World, not bothering to deal with Bernard, who was raving like a lunatic. "I will kill them." Bernard panted as he looked in the direction where the Dark World and Mo family people went. After a long while, he chased after them with a murderous look. Chapter 29. Eating Human Flesh. Chapter 29. Eating Human Flesh. In the thick forest, while carrying Miu Dai on her back, Di Yalin was moving with Shiryen. Being on alert, Shiryen was observing the surroundings carefully. Once he found trails of demon beasts, he would tell Di Yalin in advance. Thus she could change her direction to avoid meeting demon beasts. Time flew by. Quickly it became dark and there was the bright moon hanging in the sky. Terrible howls could be heard in the serene forest now and then. Those demon beasts who loved to move around at night began to hunt at this time after resting during the day. And at night, Shiryan's eyesight worsened, making it hard for him to distinguish a safe area from a demon beast-occupied area. Some demon beasts didn't even make a sound when they were hunting. Thus, where there were howls of demon beasts would be an unsafe place, but where there were no howls didn't mean it was safe either. It might be hiding in even greater danger. After 3 hours of running, Di Yalin and Shiryen were both tired. Though they killed Tumu together at dusk, they paid a price. Di Yalin had lost too much profound chi defending against Tumu's fierce attack, and she continued consuming her energy by running nonstop in the woods with Miu Dai on her back. Di Yalin was extremely exhausted now. It was only her strong willpower that was supporting her along. Shiryen was in no better state either. His shoulder was wounded, and though it was bound up and the immortal martial spirit was helping him recover, it still needed more time. The side effect of operating was a great loss of energy. Also, Kinmo and Tumu's profound chi which he had absorbed was still being purified, and the desire for blood was welling up now and then, but he still needed to observe the surroundings cautiously. He was even more tired than Dialin. "Let's have a rest," Muyu Dai advised softly. According to Dialin's heavier steps and slower actions, Muyu Dai realized that she was going to hit her limit soon. "Okay." Shuryen took a breath and replied calmly, "Let me find a comfortable place." Immediately, he climbed up an ancient tree like a monkey to find dense foliage to hide himself. Standing on that ancient tree, Shuryen was examining the surroundings. Dancing from tree branch to tree branch, he moved to a nearby withered tree. The ancient tree had thick, dry trunk. It must have been dead for years. Shuryen examined the dry branch of that withered ancient tree and was surprised. This tree is hollow from the inside, and its bottom is spacious enough for us three to sit down. A good place. You two have a rest first, then come up. The upper part of that ancient tree was thin and was only wide enough for one person to slip in, but its bottom was rather thick. It was 10 meters tall, which was easy for Shuryen and Dialin to slip down, and also wide enough for Muyu Dai to climb with the help of a rope. Hearing that there was such a good place, Dialin couldn't bear it anymore and urged, "Then let's get in soon. Demon beasts haunt this area. If we bump into one, it would become trouble." "Okay, hand that rope to me. I will pull Miss Mu up first." 2 minutes later, the three of them sat down together in the hollow bottom of that ancient tree trunk. The starlight fell into the empty center of the trunk. Outside, the demon beasts were howling ominously. There was total silence inside. Muyu Dai and Dialin were filled with agony. All along the way, those two had stuck with Luo Hao and helped each other through many difficulties. But now, only the two of them were alive, and it was still uncertain if they could survive. Their friends had died and bad guys kept chasing. Maybe tomorrow the people of the Dark World and the Tush Mercenary Union would catch them and harass them. The feeling of hopeless for tomorrow made Muyu Dai and Dialin quite worried. Shuryen's state was better, for he hadn't been together with Luo Hao for a long time, so he wasn't so emotional. Although the three of them died, he felt far from grieved and could still think straight. Well, he also felt regret for Luo Hao's death. Luo Hao had treated him well and had trained him within his gravitational field every night, which consumed a lot of Luo Hao's energy. He owed Luo Hao a lot. Especially when he heard Luo Hao's death was connected to the Mo family, he thought he should take responsibility. He engraved the three parties, the Dark World, the Tush Mercenary Union and the Mo family, in mind and was determined to take revenge someday. After glancing at Dialin and Muyu Dai, Shuryen frowned. They looked dull and hopeless, without any fighting spirit. He knew they were hurt deeply by Luo Hao's death, but it was still a long way to the Merchant Union. They wouldn't survive if they lost their fighting spirit. Pondering for a while, Shuryen considered doing something. Gazing at them, he came up with an idea. In the center of the hollow tree, the three of them sat down cross-legged. However, due to limited space, when the three of them all sat together, there was only a small space between them. Their legs were so close to each other that they could even feel the warmth from each other's body. At first, Shuryen kept his legs together, with a tiny gap between his and the legs of the other women. But he suddenly spread his legs a little, with his left leg touching the leg of Dialin and his right leg touching the leg of Muyu Dai. He could clearly feel the difference between the muscles of the two women. One's thigh was strong and solid, while the other's was smooth and soft. He liked both of them. Shuryen's little action seemed unintentional, but the two girls both had reaction in their bodies. Dialin raised her head and glared at him, but didn't say anything. However, Muyu Dai was apparently a little embarrassed. She blushed, and she tried to move her left leg secretly in order to keep a distance from Shuryen's right leg. But every time she moved her leg, Shuryen would move his right leg as well, taking every opportunity to touch her soft leg. After several times, Muyu Dai was a little irritated. She realized that Shuryen was doing this on purpose to take advantage of her, but there was nothing she could do. Her face turned red and she blushed, calling Shuryen a bastard in secret. But due to the drama with Shuryen, Muyu Dai forgot her sorrow for a while. She was so focused on cursing Shi that she forgot the terrible death of Luo Hao and others. On the other side, Di Yalin saw through the little tricks Shi was playing with Mu Dai. She seemed to have realized something, and so she didn't jump up to stop him. On the contrary, she was staring at Mu Dai with a mocking look, as if she was saying that Mu Dai was taking this too seriously. Noticing Di Yalin's look, Mu Dai was even more embarrassed, and her face was becoming even redder. She was so angry on the inside that she rolled her eyes at Shi with a look of shame. Shi closed his eyes, pretending that he was not doing all this on purpose. He breathed in and out naturally, as if he was sleeping. Endure. Endure it. I won't let you go peacefully when I recover. Mu Dai was cursing Shi on the inside. She could feel Shi body temperature on her skin, and her face had turned completely red. But all she could do was to curse him on the inside. Of course Shi wasn't sleeping. With his eyes closed, he was feeling and comparing the touch of their thighs. The muscles on Di Yalin's leg was strong and vigorous, while Mu Dai's felt soft and bouncy. Both of them were so attractive. After comparing for a while, Shi decided that both of their thighs felt good. He felt so wonderful that he could barely tell which of them was better. However, while he was focusing on comparing those thighs, Shi started to feel a burning sexual arousal. His primitive desires were out of their cage. From within his meridians, threads of negative energy started to seep out secretly. Shi could feel his pants getting tighter and tighter. His breath became shorter and shorter. From deep within, he didn't have the crazy desire for killing. Instead, he could only feel one simple but strong desire. The more he suppressed his lust, the more he was about to lose control. Shi lost control of himself gradually. Mu Dai suddenly noticed this change. She called out in a low voice, "Sister Lan, this guy looks a little strange. It seems he is returning to the beast he used to be." Shi was breathing heavily, with sweat covering his forehead. His body was trembling slightly. It looked like he was trying very hard to fight something from the inside. Because the two, Di Yalin and Mu Dai, were sitting next to him with their thighs touching each other, they both noticed the strange reaction on Shi body. Glaring at Shi for a moment, Di Yalin blushed as she said, "This time he is different. He wanted to kill before, but now he... Now what?" Mu Dai was confused. "Now he wants to eat human flesh," Di Yalin answered briefly. She looked a little embarrassed as well, and couldn't finish her sentence with a more detailed explanation. "Eat human flesh?" Mu Dai's face turned white as she heard this. She screamed with terror, "This is even worse. How come? Will he also turn into those demon beasts? Sister Lan, is he gonna eat us both? What should we do?" Apparently she didn't understand Di Yalin. "You silly girl, what are you thinking about?" Di Yalin cursed with embarrassment. "He is turning into a horny beast." Mu Dai froze for a while before she realized something. Her pretty face got even redder. She mumbled, "Sister Lan, just let me play the zither for a while to help him release his energy. How about you go out for a while?" I want to go out as well." "Okay, I will show you out." Di Yalin nodded. Her eyes lit up with a flash of light and was about to fly up. Just then, Shi suddenly opened his eyes. With bloodshot eyes, he grabbed Di Yalin like a horny beast. The tree hole was not that big. When she was pinned by Shi, Di Yalin could barely move her beautiful body. There was no way she could escape. "Bastard! Take your hands off me!" Di Yalin screamed, "You dumb girl! Pull him away! Quick!" Mu Dai was taken over with panic. She tried to pull Shi away, but his body was as heavy as a rock. No matter how hard she tried, his body just wouldn't move. Di Yalin was extremely exhausted these days. With her profound chi not yet recovered, she could barely struggle against Shi beastly force. "Sheila!" A loud sound of clothes being torn broke the silence in the tree hole. Di Yalin felt a little chilly around her hip. She instantly realized that her leather skirt was gone. But before she could even defend, she felt a giant hand reaching between her thighs and rubbing her hip insatiably. "Bastard!" Di Yalin couldn't help but scream. She shouted to Mu Dai, "Quick! Stop him! He has been overtaken by his genitals. I can't stop him. Muyudai punched on Shiryan's back with all her might and cried out in panic. With her sensitive parts being touched and rubbed by those fingers, Di Yalin gradually lost her defenses. She couldn't find any strength to fight back and couldn't help moaning. Her arms gave up the fight as well. Muyudai was astonished. She whispered in a low voice with blushed face, "Sister Lan, why are you screaming?" "I am not screaming." "Do something." Ouch. Di Yalin felt weaker and weaker, and her voice were getting softer as well. "Sister Lan, it's too late." Muyudai mumbled with her eyes filled with fear. What's too late?" Di Yalin was stunned. The next moment, she felt a hard thing inside her body. With her body trembling with the thrill, Di Yalin realized that it was too late to put on a fight. A miraculous feeling pervaded in her body and drowned her sanity. Well, maybe we will all be dead tomorrow. I will just let you take me this time." The continuous pounding she felt from that guy had completely crushed her defenses, both physically and mentally. Di Yalin covered her mouth with one hand. She couldn't help but scream with pleasure as Shiryan continuously twitched inside of her. Muyudai's pretty face was covered in panic. She stood there like a statue, watching the two of them getting all sweaty. Right in front of her, Shiryan was working hard on Di Yalin. Apparently, under his mighty force, Di Yalin couldn't put on much fight. She gradually got lost in his passion as well, and even moved her hips to match Shiryan's rhythm. You too." Muyudai's pretty face was also bloodshot. She couldn't do anything but stare at the two of them lying within such a narrow space, doing it right in front of her eyes. The hot picture of them was mind-blowing for her. Muyudai was dumbstruck and didn't know what to do at all. Chapter 30. Inside the Tree. Chapter 30. Inside the Tree. Shiryan suddenly regained his sanity in the middle of his actions. His body was still working on the woman, with waves of physical pleasure coursing through him. Even with his eyes closed, he could instantly tell what he had been doing. He had one hand on Di Yalin's hips, pulling her alluring body tightly towards him, and the other hand lingering on her extraordinary bosoms, rubbing and squeezing. That hot body of Di Yalin's was completely under his control. She was all over his body like a snake. Her eyes were lost in the passion, with sweet sweat all over her body. She couldn't help but move along with his rhythm, only to bring him more excitement and pleasure. Many thoughts were speeding through Shiryan's mind, but his eyes remained shut. Neither did he move his hands roughly. He continued to work his lower body on that woman and took every moment to enjoy this wonderful experience. Compared to the rough actions he had before, after he regained his sanity, Shiryan slightly slowed down his movements with a softer touch, yet with way more masterful skills. His hands were blessed by magic. When he moved those hands on Di Yalin's body, he knew exactly which spots to work on, triggering an even bigger reaction in her body. Suddenly, Di Yalin's body was flipped around, with her impressive breasts pressed tightly against the tree while her hips were thrust towards Shiryan. She lifted her plump hips up, shaking and swinging it back and forth, enjoying Shiryan's whipping in a new position. Muyudai was totally embarrassed and blushing. She leaned her fragile body onto the other side of the tree. Her beautiful eyes were lingering and staring at the two of them doing it. With his eyes shut, Shiryan was totally enjoying the moment. He had let his most primitive desires out of his body, which seemed to have sped up the purification process of the profound chi in his meridians. Di Yalin was already lost in his passion, doing nothing but coordinating with Shiryan's movements. Before long, Shiryan felt a strong wave of pleasure flooding towards his brain, completely out of his control. Together with that thrilling excitement, he could feel a most wonderful power start pouring out of his meridians and rushing into his body. When that strange power reached his abdomen, it split into two parts. One poured into his profound chi, while the other part blended with his essence and shot into Di Yalin's body with his coming climax. With the short gasps of the sweaty man and woman, Muyudai lost all her strength. She fell down onto the ground, breathing heavily as her whole mind went completely blank. Shi slowly moved away from Yalan. He pulled up his pants, sat down in silence, and started to operate the profound chi inside his body. Yalan had lost all her strength as well, lying weakly on the ground, her whole body shining with a sexy red color. She only came to her senses after a while. She put on her leather skirt with a red face and slowly sat down. The three of them returned to their original positions, sitting together in the tree with crossed legs. Muyudai was the first to regain her calm. Although her face was still a little red, she moved her beautiful eyes between Shi and Yalan, as if expecting something from them. Shi looked calm on the outside. He kept his eyes closed and focused his attention on the strange power he felt in his profound chi during his orgasm. He was guiding this power within his profound chi slowly through his body. He wouldn't want to miss any opportunity to enhance his power. Yalan hadn't opened her eyes yet, but she knew that Muyudai was staring at her the whole time. Out of shame, she didn't dare to open her eyes and look up. She was so ashamed that she just wanted to bury herself in the ground. Shi had forced himself on her inside this tree, right in front of Muyudai. However, she didn't put up much of a fight. Even worse, she was actually enjoying it during the process. She felt so ashamed of herself. Despite being a casual and bold girl, she knew this craziness was totally out of line for her. She was too ashamed to face Muyudai. Right about that time, a strange excitement slowly rose and spread from the sensitive parts of her lower body. Yalan couldn't help but tremble and almost moaned again. She anxiously twisted her body, secretly calling herself a slut, and quickly concentrated her attention on the change that was going on in her body. After some observation, Yalan felt that the strange power inside of her had turned into two streams. One stream was flowing slowly towards her abdomen, while the other part had settled around her chest and her flesh and muscles, which seemed to have altered the parts around her chest in secret. She could clearly feel her bones and flesh, muscles and vessels around her chest going through some incredible changes which she couldn't explain. That strange energy, mixed with her profound chi, had been pouring into her abdomen, driving out a strong wave of power from within. Her profound chi had suddenly been enhanced enormously. Yalan couldn't help but exclaim. She quickly concentrated on dealing with her refreshed profound chi, operating it through a specific path through her body. The bright moonlight was shining into the tree and lit up the tiny space inside. Shi slowly woke up, breathing slowing in and out with a calm rhythm. He had reached the second sky of the nascent realm. With the help of that strange power, Shi had enhanced himself to the next level and successfully reached the second sky of the nascent realm. After he woke up, Shi found the wound on his shoulder didn't hurt that much. With the help of the immortal martial spirit, the broken bones and muscles were slowly regenerating and recovering themselves on their own. With this speed, it would only take a few days before he had fully recovered. When he slowly opened his eyes, Shi noticed a bright pair of eyes staring straight at him. But when he looked back, those beautiful eyes quickly looked away. "Miss Mu, how come you are still awake?" Shi said with a calm voice, with nothing strange showing on his face. Seeing Shi looking back at her, Muyudai was so embarrassed that she quickly looked away. She turned her face away with a blush to avoid eye contact, and said in a joking tone, "You two were making such loud noises. How is it possible for me to fall asleep?" "Oh, so sorry to disturb you. I will remember that next time." Shi laughed with embarrassment and defended himself with a natural explanation. "There must be something wrong with my body. Something odd happened to me and destroyed my sanity. There's nothing I could do about it. Sorry. So you mean you were unconscious during the whole time?" Muyudai said with a grin on her face. "I was watching you two doing it. At first you were, but afterwards you couldn't have been unconscious. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to do that kind of thing." Muyudai was too shy to continue her sentence. She was right there when Shi pulled out all those tricks on Yalan. No one in their unconscious mind would be able to play all those sexual tricks or remember all those different kinds of sexual positions, right in the middle of being insane. Therefore, Muyudai was certain that Shi had come to his senses way before he finished on Yalan. Shi was completely speechless for a while. He sat frozen there for some time and put on an embarrassing smile. So Miss Mu, have you been watching us doing it the whole time? Then please spare my rude actions. I know that I am a real bastard. You. How can you be so shameless? Miyudai got so angry that she hit Shi hard on his thigh, making Shi scream and beg for mercy. Seeing Shi suffering and screaming, Miyudai felt a little better. She turned around and saw Yalin was also sitting there in silence with her eyes closed. However, her face was also carrying a shiny blush. Miyudai also felt angry towards Yalin. She jumped over to her side and suddenly patted on her thigh. Yalin was already very embarrassed. She couldn't help the trembling of her body, but still kept her eyes shut. She thought this was another trick of Shi and called him a fucking bastard in secret. After all this, how dare he still tease her like this? Sister Lan, how long are you planning to fool us by sleeping? Your face is already as red as an apple. And you still want to pretend that you are operating your profound chi? You think we are both too foolish to tell? Miyudai said in an annoyed voice. Yalin let out a soft sigh and opened her eyes reluctantly. She replied with embarrassment, I just woke up. What are you two talking about? I have no idea. Miyudai went silent all of a sudden. However, the beautiful but sharp eyes of hers were continuously moving between Yalin and Shi. Her underlying sentence was obvious. How can you just pretend that nothing had happened between the two of you? Under the judgmental stare from Miyudai, Shi still remained calm and peaceful. You've got to say, there aren't many people as shameless as him in this world. He actually could pretend that nothing had happened between him and the woman. Because he guessed that Yalin actually wouldn't mind this thing very much. She would even like or miss this kind of feeling. Knowing that he wouldn't receive any trouble from Yalin, he didn't bother to worry at all. However, under Miyudai's questioning look, Yalin wasn't able to remain that calm. She thought about it and decided that she should express some anger toward Shi. Otherwise, she would really appear to be shameless in the eyes of Miyudai. Despite everything, Shi had helped her experience overwhelming pleasure and excitement, which her man could hardly offer even back when he was still alive. You fucking bastard! Yalin suddenly jumped up, screaming with a sharp voice and pointing right at Shi. How dare you do that to me back then? How dare you? Sure. Keep it quiet. You're gonna draw all those demon beasts here. Furthermore, the people from the dark world are still chasing us. Shi reminded her. Yalin nodded. She had lost her power again and said in a low voice, You asshole, so how are you gonna make it up to me? Seeing Yalin acting like this, he was even more assured about his prior judgment. He knew that she didn't mind this little episode very much. She only jumped out to accuse him because of the pressure from Miyudai. Shi was actually amused by her reaction. He pretended to be thinking very hard there. He bowed his head down, put on a sad face, pretending to be sincere in his apology, and said in an honest voice, It's all my fault. Sister Lan, how about you tell me, how would you like to be compensated? Yalin was literally surprised by his reply. She froze for a while and thought very hard about his question. She only came to curse him because she didn't want to appear shameless in front of Miyudai. She actually hadn't really thought about how to punish Shi. Caught by surprise by Shi, she literally didn't know how to respond. How about you beat him up and call it a night? Miyudai put on a naughty face and joked about it. Even she could tell that her sister Lan was not intending to punish Shi, at least not very hard. That's a good idea. He surely deserves that. Yalin nodded with agreement and said with a tough voice, Just wait until he recovers from his wounds. At that time, I'm gonna kick his ass. You don't need to worry about this. I will make sure that you will be satisfied with his punishment. Miyudai rolled her eyes at Yalin and went completely speechless. What was that all about? What do I have to do with your business? So you are simply punishing him in order to make me satisfied? Whatever you two. I'm going to sleep. Miyudai had finally realized that she was literally caring too much. She should have just minded her own business. She mumbled as she turned to sleep, One horny man, one slutty woman. No wonder. You two were already expecting this to happen. I should have known better. Poor me, my soul has been hurt and my eyes have been polluted. She kept a low voice, but due to the small space between the three of them, it wouldn't be a surprise that both Di Yalin and Shi Yan had heard her clearly. Shi Yan secretly grinned and pretended to be sleeping. However, Di Yalin couldn't take this anymore. She teased Muyudai a little. "You wicked girl." Muyudai took a glance at her and mumbled again, "You too. Be quiet for the rest of the night. I really need some good sleep. Please, just control yourselves. I cannot take your actions anymore." Di Yalin replied with a blush on her face, I know. Just go to sleep, you wicked girl." Chapter 31. Blue Magic Flames. Chapter 31. Blue Magic Flames. Muyudai did as she was told and shut her mouth. However, with Muyudai staying quiet, the atmosphere between Di Yalin and Shi Yan got a little embarrassing. The two of them just lay there facing each other. Neither of them knew what to say. It's about dawn. Shi Yan looked up at the sky, trying to make some casual conversation. "How are you feeling? Has your profound chi recovered?" "Not only has my profound chi recovered, but it has also been enhanced." Di Yalin checked her body in secret. Her eyes suddenly lit up in excitement. She said in a low voice, with a blush on her face, Back then it seemed like there was some strange energy streaming into my body. That strange energy merged with my own profound chi, and even altered something in my chest." She frowned a little, trying very hard to recall the feeling. She thought that the strange stream of energy seemed to have come from Shi Yan, or was originated from the profound chi that he had shot into her body. Shi Yan thought for a while, and whispered to himself, "It really is that." Di Yalin's gorgeous eyes lit up with an exotic charm again. She insisted, "Is it because of you?" Shi Yan nodded, and explained with a smile, "I once received some pills from an alchemist, but when I took them I never managed to absorb them entirely. However, those pills, as well as their power, still remain inside my body. Back then it seemed as if the power of those pills merged with my profound chi and got planted into your body as well." The thing about absorbing profound chi from dead people was too creepy and scary to talk about, and Shi Yan didn't want anybody else to know about his secret. Therefore, he was using Master Karu as an excuse and claiming all his strange power due to those pills. Those pills must have been extraordinarily precious. Di Yalin nodded. She seemed to have bought Shi Yan's story. Along their travels, Shi Yan had resorted to using poisonous medicine powders several times. Therefore, she had already suspected that Shi Yan had some kind of relation with an alchemist. "Yeah, I guess." Shi Yan smiled without elaborating too much on his relationship with Master Karu. He thought for a while and said with a frown, "You mentioned that there was a strange stream of energy which seemed to have changed the muscles and blood vessels within your chest. Can you try to operate your profound chi around your chest and see if there are any reactions?" Shi Yan suddenly thought of the miraculous awakening of his petrifaction martial spirit inside his body. It seemed that the strange flow of energy could not only enhance one's profound chi, but also trigger one's dormant martial spirit. It was exactly due to the influence of that strange energy that the dormant petrifaction martial spirit inside his body had suddenly awakened. Even the emergence of the immortal martial spirit probably had something to do with that strange stream of energy. Hearing Di Yalin talking about the odd changes in her chest, Shi Yan had already come up with a theory. "Okay, let me try." Di Yalin slowly nodded. She concentrated her energy into her chest and paid close attention to the changes happening inside. Controlling her profound chi, streams of profound chi flew into her beautiful bosoms and lingered for a while around her tender breasts. But now her profound chi seemed to be a bit different. Suddenly a most amazing thing happened. It seemed that her profound chi had changed and was becoming hotter and hotter. Di Yalin suddenly panicked. She quickly moved the profound chi towards her arm, and then through the veins and vessels into her right palm. Boom! A magic flame the color of purest blue suddenly jumped out of Di Yalin's right palm. Although the flame was merely the size of a fist, it was burning with an extraordinarily high temperature. The little flame was dancing on Di Yalin's palm, lighting up the hollow tree, as if they were embraced by the tender blue waves of the ocean. "Wow! Yalin couldn't help but exclaim. She jumped with excitement and her eyes were shining brightly. Bingo! Shi was also secretly cheering. He was right about this energy. Looking at that blue flame, he was now certain that that strange energy could really trigger one's inborn martial spirit. The blue magic flame. Yalin couldn't help but scream in excitement. She said with complete thrill, "This is the martial spirit of my family. I know about this. This is the blue magic flame's martial spirit. Since my grandfather, no one has inherited this martial spirit." Oh my god! But how? How is this even possible? Muyudai was already awake due to the noise they were making. She was also staring at Yalin, but couldn't figure out what was going on. Muyudai looked so confused. How is that even possible? Sister Lan, you are already 27 years old. How come that you could still awaken the dormant martial spirit inside your body? What is going on here? Is this a dream? She rubbed her eyes and still couldn't believe what just happened. Yalin was brimming with excitement. She had absolutely no idea how to express her bliss. She couldn't help but continuously stare at that blue burning flame on her palm, and she suddenly burst into tears. She was actually crying in joy. However, Shi could totally understand her feelings. On the Grace mainland, warriors with martial spirits definitely took a dominant position. They would have more prosperous futures. Well, to warriors, the martial spirits were more important than anything else. Those without a martial spirit would often dream and kill for a martial spirit. To warriors like Yalin, whose family had once possessed a martial spirit, it was a real shame not to carry on their family's martial spirit as an inheritance. If this situation continued for several generations, even the most glorious family could end up fading into oblivion. No matter if it was the warrior or their family, possession of a martial spirit was essential. So what is really going on here? Muyudai was still confused after staring at Yalin for a while, who was totally flying high in excitement, so she had to turn the question to Shi. Shi put on an embarrassed smile. Well, this is hard to explain. It has something to do with the pills and their exotic power. I don't exactly know what kind of pills they were. Anyway, those pills are indeed a little extraordinary. Quit staring at me like that. I already said I really have no idea. You bastard! Come here. Thank you. Thank you. Yalin put out the blue flame on her palm and suddenly hugged Shi tightly, as if she were trying to squeeze his whole body into her bosom. Her sexy body couldn't help but tremble with the excitement. Those delicious bosoms of hers were squeezed against Shi's chest, which gave Shi the opportunity to experience their glorious softness again. Before long, he had that kind of reaction from below his belt again. But this time, Yalin found out about his little thrill down there almost immediately. She quickly released Shi from her arms with a blush on her face. Her eyes were especially charming, shining with light and dancing colors. She couldn't help but laugh and said with a smile, "You ass, always so horny." Hey, Shi also laughed in embarrassment. He didn't give a reply though. Muyudai stared at the two people and she was obviously not so happy. Hey, you two, knock it off. I am still here. Don't put on a sex show in front of me every time you get a chance. You wicked girl. I'm just too excited. Yalin replied with a laugh. What is going on after all? The question was killing Muyudai. I don't know either. Yalin shook her head, her eyes still lit up with those flying colors. She laughed. I guess it's all because of him. You mean, you had sex with this guy, and then all of a sudden, your martial spirit that had been dormant inside of your body for 27 years, which probably would never be awakened in your life, was suddenly brought to life? Muyudai said with a curious look on her pretty face. Incredible as it sounds, that is the truth. Yalin admitted with a red face. So the essence of his, what is it? Some magic medicine with a strange power. Muyudai also started to blush. She shook her head as she couldn't believe this at all. No. I don't believe this. This doesn't make sense at all. Shi looked up at the sky from the hollow tree and said, "The sun is out. We should get going." Yeah, we should probably keep moving. Yalin agreed. Apparently, she didn't want to spend too much time discussing this issue about herself, in case Miyudai would say something again to embarrass her. After saying that, Yalin quickly flew up to the top of the hollow tree. She threw a rope down to the two of them and asked Miyudai to come out quickly. No, I am still not buying it. Miyudai was obviously still obsessed with the issue, and only grabbed that rope after some sighing and groaning. With Yalin's help, Miyudai slowly rose up with help from the rope, and slowly rose to the top of the hollow tree. You asshole! What are you doing? Miyudai suddenly started screaming. The two delicate legs of hers were kicking desperately, and her mesmerizing body was swinging in the air. Let me help you with this. Shiryen put both his hands on Miyudai's soft bottom and tried to lift her up. He said with a horny smile, "There you go. This will save you some effort." No! Stop it. I don't want your help. Miyudai shouted with her body twisting intensely. Her hands suddenly lost their grip and she fell from midair. Thump! The two of them fell onto the ground inside the hollow tree. Shiryen was lying there with a satisfactory look on his face. Miyudai was sitting right across his waist with her legs kicking and shouting, "Stop! Stop!" The soft and smooth bottom of hers was right where Shiryen liked it most, pressing tightly against his sensitive parts. Shiryen's dick was still hard due to the previous entanglement with Yalin. Now, with the pressing and twisting of Miyudai's hips, and her delicious parts continuously touching and rubbing his sensitive parts, Shiryen was turned on again, and he almost couldn't help but moan in great pleasure. Asshole. You horny dog. It didn't take Miyudai much time to discover Shiryen's intentions. She quickly got up with her hands covering her butt, screaming and crying. Her face was so pretty with that blush, and her beautiful eyes were filled with little tears. Sister Lon, this bad guy. He was trying to take advantage of me. Shh. Yalin looked pretty serious. She made a sign to tell them to stay quiet. Shiryen quickly stood up. He suddenly forgot all about the sexy scenes that had previously happened in this hollow tree. He climbed up the tree quickly and stayed with Yalin. He said with a calm and cool voice, "What's the situation?" Demon beasts. Chapter 32. The Silver Thunder Wolf. Chapter 32. The Silver Thunder Wolf. The howls of the demon beasts came from the woods far away. Tata, tata. Heavy running steps sounded across the silent night. Judging from the sound of those steps, one could tell that it must have been human beings running in the woods. However, Shiryen couldn't tell if it was a warrior chasing the demon beast or a demon beast hunting a human. He didn't want to be involved, and thus said to Yalin, "Hide well. Let's not ask for trouble. Remember the lesson from the Tush Mercenary Union." Yalin nodded and mumbled to Miyudai on the hollow tree, "Don't make a sound. Stay inside the tree leaves. Let's go and hide inside another dense tree." After a little thought, Shiryen moved swiftly, found another luxuriant ancient tree and crouched in the leaves immediately. As soon as he did that, Yalin came up and hid herself with him. They were still on alert as they hid themselves in the dense leaves. Meanwhile, they also removed their scent from the surroundings to completely hide their presence. Before long, 5 flustered mercenaries appeared at a distance with terrified looks on their faces. They were all heavily wounded. Amongst them, the leader was a human-level warrior, and the rest were at the nascent level. The mercenaries were running through the woods with flustered expressions, looking over their shoulders, as if they were getting chased by demon beasts. And that was exactly what was happening. Just as they appeared in Shiryen's sight, he beheld a fire snake and 2 ice lizards moving in the woods quickly. At the same time, several silver-armored scorpions, which were nearly a foot big, came up from the left, seeming to encircle them. The 5 mercenaries were completely terrified as they rushed into the woods. Shiryen turned pale as he realized that those mercenaries were done for. Shiryen could clearly see a robust silver wolf in the direction they were heading to. The wolf was 4 meters long, but they didn't see it. The wolf had 2 silver 5-meter-long wings, which looked novel and mysterious, adorned with delicate patterns. Though it was the first time that Shiryen had seen it, he had heard its story long ago. That was a silver thunder wolf of level 7, a top demon beast in the dark forest. Then he was sure that it wouldn't be a warriors kill demon beast scenario, but the complete opposite one. The bloody hunting started at once. The moment the 5 warriors rushed into the woods and saw the awaiting Silver Thunder Wolf, they screamed with despair. The Silver Thunder Wolf didn't even give them a chance to struggle. It spread its thunder wings in no time, and devastating blasts came out one after another beside the warriors. 3 of them cut into shreds in an instant. The Silver Thunder Wolf stood there in arrogance. It didn't strike again. Those chasing demon beasts ran up quickly and encircled the rest too in no time. The fire snake and ice lizards worked together to attack the warriors. Soon, one of them was poisoned by the silver armor scorpion, and the other killed by an ice lizard. Creak! Creak! Horrifying sounds broke the serenity of the deep forest. Apart from the Silver Thunder Wolf, the other demon beasts crowded around the 5 dead bodies and started feasting on their bones. Yalin was too terrified to look in that direction. She was not at all afraid of killing, but those demon beasts were eating human flesh, which would make her vomit badly if she saw. Hiding in the leaves, Shi was gazing at those demon beasts calmly, while figuring out something in his mind. As the 5 warriors were dead, their profound chi was gradually seeping out, and as it would eventually melt in the air and disappear. If he could get to that area before the profound chi disappeared, he would benefit by a lot. However, there were so many demon beasts feasting on the bodies, he could do nothing but hope they would leave soon. Ouch! A miserable human cry came from very far away, which was full of fear and despair. The still Silver Thunder Wolf suddenly howled and dashed out. Hearing its howl, those demon beasts, who had almost eaten up the 5 bodies, stopped eating at once and followed the wolf in a hurry. They seemed to hunt other human beings. Immediately, Shi jumped down the dense tree as soon as they left and headed to those messed-up bodies like a ghost. Yalin was startled as she screamed from the tree in a low voice. "What are you doing?" "Going and checking what had happened. I will be back soon. Don't leave the tree." Shi didn't even bother to look back and moved to those bodies speedily. As he arrived near to the bodies, he closed his eyes and began to feel them. Luckily enough, it wasn't too late for him. The warrior of human level had more profound chi than others, and there was still 20% of it left on his body. The invisible profound chi went into his pores, as being attracted by a magnet, and then flew into his meridians. Sensing the power of the foreign profound chi, Shi smiled with satisfaction. Before long, all the profound chi which had not melted and disappeared into the air yet, went into Shi body. At the sight of the limbs and entrails on the ground, Shi frowned. Nonetheless, enduring the bad smell, he began to examine their carry bags. There was too much blood on the food, and it might also be the poison from the silver armor scorpion. It's inedible now. Crystal coins were not of much use in this area, and too many of it would prevent them from moving fast, thus the warriors didn't carry too many crystal coins. Searching for a while, Shi was able to pillage only few demon beast material and medicine. Poor guys. Shi mumbled as he cleaned his hands with one bag. Then he walked towards where Yalin was hiding. Hull! Hull! Demon beasts were howling in the dark forest even at dawn. They seemed to be running around and hunting for warriors and mercenaries in a group. Hearing the horrifying sound, Shi wasn't frightened. On the contrary, he was a little happy. Demon beasts' actions would influence their chasers. They would be spotted by demon beasts if they were still moving in the forest at night, and the more they moved, the more likely they would be found by the demon beasts. Maybe the people from the dark world, Family and the Tush Mercenary Union would lose a lot tonight, and the demon beasts would have a full belly tonight. He was right. That night, Chowga and his people were taken care of by the demon beasts. As they wanted Shi and Muyu die desperately, the troop didn't sleep at night after Hulong committed suicide. Instead, they kept searching for Shi and his friends in the dark forest. Therefore, they were noticed by demon beasts. Thanks to the 5 warriors, the troops finally got to know of the reality and hid themselves in ancient trees. "What were you doing?" Yalin frowned. Were their possessions really worth the risk? If the demon beasts returned or if you were noticed by them, you would have had no way to escape. Look, didn't I return safely? Shi climbed up the tree without explaining what he had gained. Looking rigid, he said, "Why are all the demon beasts hunting for warriors and mercenaries like crazy? Someone must have done something to irritate them. Or they wouldn't act like this. What should we do?" Yalin had no idea. Are we still going to head forward? Wait for a while. After spending the whole night hunting, those demon beasts should be much more subdued during the day. We can set off at noon. Okay then. Chapter 33, Martial Spirit of Music. Chapter 33, Martial Spirit of Music. Yalin and Shi went into the hollow tree again. What's happening? Miyudai, who was staying in the hollow tree in fear, got a little surprised. I heard some explosions just now. Did some demon beasts pass by? Shi sat down and began to feel the profound chi which had filled his meridians, without replying to Miyudai. Most of the profound chi on those 5 warriors had vanished into the air, and Shi was able to absorb only a small part of it. But since there was a human-level warrior among them, even if he just got a small part, it was a lot. However, Shi was still a little worried. He was cautious, for he didn't know when the negative emotions would break out. Seeing Shi keep silence, Yalin told Miyudai what had just happened outside. Hearing the story, Miyudai's face turned serious and she seemed to be more worried. They were chased by so many bad guys, and now there were demon beasts in their way. She found their future was getting more and more hopeless. The sun rose slowly and began to light up the sky. After one night's rest, the 3 started to discuss in the hollow tree. Shi didn't got too many chances to communicate with the girls when Luo Hao and his people were with them, so he didn't know much about them. But now those males, including Luo Hao, had been killed, so he guessed he should know more about them, or he would land himself in a passive position. "Why is the dark world chasing you?" Shi asked in a steady voice while frowning. "You're from the Fire Empire." Miyudai nodded and sighed. "It's all because of me." "What's the matter?" Shi knew Miyudai was a very special person. Now that she was to explain, he wanted the whole story. "Sister Lan, you tell him." Miyudai glanced at Yalin and sighed again. "You don't know who Dai is?" Yalin was surprised as she looked at Shi with curious eyes. "Though you are from the Merchant Union, you must have heard of General Muku from the Fire Empire." "Muku? The general of the Eagle Army of the Fire Empire? The Iron Eagle King." Shi was so astonished that he nodded after a long thought. "So she is the granddaughter of the Iron Eagle King?" "I got it." Shi went through the fragmental memories about the Iron Eagle King, King Muku, and got the complete story after recalling it. In the memories of the other Shi, Muku was the general of the Eagle Army of the Fire Empire, who was a Nirvana-level warrior and held the real power of the Fire Empire. The Iron Eagle King was not only famous in the Fire Empire, but also well known in the Merchant Union and the God-Blessed Empire. Muku was a legendary military leader who was seen in every battle between the Fire Empire and the God-Blessed Empire. He was famous for his cruelty on the battlefield, and uncountable people had perished in his hands. Muku was merciless to his foes and was also obstinate to his own people, thus offending many powerful people. 3 years ago, in a battle between the Fire Empire and the God-Blessed Empire, Muku was killed by 5 Nirvana-level warriors. For Muku had offended a lot of people when he was alive, his family got into trouble as soon as he died. Just in a few days, many of his direct relatives were slaughtered, thus the big family sank at once. "I have heard of the Iron Eagle King." After thinking for a while, Shi nodded. Dai is the Eagle King's granddaughter, the only survivor of her family. The Dark World is an organization of assassins in the Empire, and it was the one who slaughtered her family. Dai could survive only because of her martial spirit. On that day, her zither killed a lot of people in an invisible way, for her martial spirit has something to do with music. "You mean, Miss Mu's martial spirit could kill with her zither?" "Yes. Dai's zither can not only prevent one from becoming mad, but also can shatter one's organs. The Dark World wants Dai because their lord trains in a vicious martial skill and loses his mind now and then. He wants to calm himself with the help of Dai's music. I got it. Shi nodded. As the dark world was involved in the slaughter of her family, Dai would rather die than help them. How could she help their lord train his vicious martial skill? But the dark world was too powerful in the Fire Empire, so she had to seek for shelter in foreign countries. Knowing Mu Dai's identity and story, Shi asked again, then why can't Miss Mu operate her martial spirit now? Her martial spirit is quite special. Every time she operates her martial spirit and kills people, several of her veins break like the zither strings. Before the veins reconnect, the profound chi can't move fluently. She would get injured heavily if she operated the profound chi, and it would take more time for the martial spirit to recover. Yalin looked gloomy. 2 months ago, just as we were about to enter the dark forest at the border of the Fire Empire, the dark world found us and we lost several people. Since Uncle Luo couldn't prevent them anymore, Dai operated her profound chi. Though she killed a lot, her own veins broke too. And they have not recovered yet. So you need your veins to help operate the profound chi? Shi was quite confused. Are you playing your zither or playing your veins? I can't explain either. Mu Dai replied lazily. She looked dim. Damage to the martial spirit. Shi deliberated over it for a moment. Then he uttered, maybe I could help. Mu Dai and Yalin's eyes lit at once. They stared at Shi together. Well, Shi just popped up with that thought and he got embarrassed. Well, Sister Lan, your martial spirit had come to life? The medicine in my body may be helpful for her too. I think. Don't you ever think about that? Mu Dai replied with anger and she stared at him. Stop your dirty idea about me. She knew too well how Yalin regained her martial spirit. How would she sell her virginity for it? I was joking. Don't take it seriously. Shi looked indifferent, and he looked up at the entrance of the hollow tree. It's about noon, and I don't fear demon beasts. Let's resume our journey. Okay. Yalin giggled. They got out from the tree hole and advanced in the forest, while Yalin still carried Mu Dai on her back. After a whole night's hunting, the demon beasts all seemed to be resting. They didn't see a single high-level demon beast on the way. Yet, those human remains reminded them how nasty the demon beasts were last night. At dusk, the profound chi in Shi body was purified, and thus the negative power filled Shi mind again. He got a strong urge to kill. He knew Mu Dai's zither could comfort him and diminish the negative emotions, but it would attract those demon beasts and their chasers in the serenity of the forest. Since he had the experience with Yalin, Shi hesitated for a second, wandered his lustful eyes on Yalin's delicious body for a while as he developed a plan. Night came. In a secret valley, Mu Dai cuddled in the branches of a dense ancient tree. She was gazing at the bushes 10 meters away with a blushed face while grinding her teeth. The bushes were shaking continuously, combined with waves of suppressed moans. Whores! Biting her lips, Mu Dai cursed. After a long yell, that bush calmed down. Minutes later, Shi and Yalin stood up from it and walked back with messy clothes. Shi walked in steady steps and looked calm, as if nothing had happened. While Yalin looked fresh in her skin and smiled with satisfied eyes, though she had some grass in her long hair. Miss Mu, why didn't you go to sleep? As he got close, Shi saw Mu Dai was watching him in despise, so he asked casually with a careless smile. Humph. Mu Dai was angry as she cursed, shameless. Oh! Shi returned her a smile and said casually, maybe we can't even see the sun tomorrow. Who would care about this? Do whatever you want. Yeah, we could be 3 dead bodies at this time of tomorrow. I don't care. Yalin walked up and showed just a slight of shame. Hearing their excuse, Mu Dai was stunned. As she realized their situation, she didn't know what to say at all. Sister Lan, trained by heart. Maybe you can improve a lot. Shi smiled meaningfully. Okay, I understand. Yalin got his undertone and laughed. You're really something, aren't you? Haha. Thus, Yalin climbed up the ancient tree and sat down on a strong branch. Under Mu Dai's confused eyes, she started to train wholeheartedly. Shi didn't climb up the tree. Instead, he sat down beside the tree cross-legged. Due to the intercourse with Yalin, those negative emotions in his meridians were cleansed. And the miraculous power from the meridians gushed into his body and nourished his martial spirit. Only a small part of it went into Diyalan's body, but this benefited Diyalan too. Closing his eyes, Shi could feel that power was changing his blood and flesh. He operated his profound qi in the big circulation. 1 hour later, Shi found that miraculous power had all gone into his body, thus he began to practice his petrification martial spirit. As he thought about it, his bare arms hardened, and gradually they turned into dark brown. Dark brown? Shi opened his eyes abruptly, which were as bright as stars. He looked in wonder and carefully examined his arms. Dark brown! It was exactly dark brown. Shi was so excited that he wanted to laugh wildly. At that moment, he finally realized how that power benefited his martial spirit magically. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.